Okay, I got the red smoke.
Gun runs north to south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke.
Okay, copy. West of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now.
Come on with it, baby. Give it to me. I need it. Get cleared hot.
Copy, cleared hot.
You ready, Michelle? Mm-hmm. You ready to do this?
Let's do it.
Dude, I know where we have to open.
Okay.
Well, what was it? A month ago, Medal of Honor awarded to a TF 160th pilot. Correct me if I'm wrong, that is the first 160th pilot who has been awarded a Medal of Honor?
It is.
What the hell happened?
I don't know.
Of course you know everything.
It's a secret.
It is not a secret. It sounds like they got their ass shot off on the way in.
Yeah.
Don't they release a citation in and of itself? Or have they not really released much as to what happened that day?
I think this one went a little out of its norm. You know,
Yeah.
like I heard rumors of this thing about a week or two out, and I was like, no, they can't give them the Medal of Honor yet. They've got to go through a process.
It was fast.
Because there are some guys, Carl Meyer, for example, was a Little Bird pilot in Mogadishu, who they're trying to upgrade his Silver Star to a Medal of Honor.
Okay.
So, but it's a process. But
Even getting awarded the thing in the first place, most of the time, if you go to the funeral for well, unfortunately, people may not know this, most are given posthumously.
Exactly.
They're probably going to have a Silver Star or a Navy Cross, something along that line at the funeral. And about a year later, I would say, honestly, 2 years, it gets upgraded.
Yeah.
So it's quick.
And he's the first CW5 to get one as well.
First off, nobody even knows what a
It's a
CW5
unicorn.
does. Nobody even knows.
I still go into military installations now with my retired ID card. And I go to an Air Force base one time, and they had like the supervisor come over, and they're looking at it, and like, this is valid. He's real. And I'm like, of course I'm real. What the hell? Like, we've never seen a W5 before.
No. I mean, have you ever seen one outside of the aviation world?
No.
Okay. I mean, I've seen warrants exist in the SEAL community, and I'm going to be totally honest. I know how to recognize a warrant officer's collar device, but if you were to ask me which one it was between 1 to 5, I can't answer.
Well, in the Army, it's easy. It's just dots. Yeah, W1 is 1 dot, W2 is 2 dots.
Yeah.
And you get up to W5, and we have the coin slot. So it looks like you put a quarter in there.
Okay.
So,
You're never going to see one, though.
No.
There's like 4 or 5.
Well, you can watch this episode and you can see one.
There you go. So what? Okay, this guy gets a Medal of Honor.
Yeah.
Are they going to let him fly anymore? I mean, let's be honest about the impact this has on your actual career.
If he well, first of all, he's got some extensive damage to his leg.
Yeah.
So
I think, wasn't it both? I think
I don't know.
small arms fire, it sounded like at least, if not anti-aircraft fire.
Yeah, well, it goes to show you that the enemy has a vote, right? So no matter how well it's planned, no matter what way you come in, no matter how you jam comms or any of that kind of stuff, there's some guy.
It's tough to jam lead.
Yeah.
And he was in a 47, correct?
Yeah.
Do you guys, I know your seats have some Kevlar in them, but other than that, are you just kind of up there?
There's not a lot of armor. I mean, we had, in the very first days of the war, we took all the armor out because it was too heavy to get over the mountains. And then General Brown made us start putting it back in. And then, with it goes the penalty and cargo capacity. So you generally don't put in much armor in there. And just before I left, we got transparent door armor. So it's about this thick, about 1.5 inches thick. It's a panel about like this. And it just goes right here by your thigh, so you can look down and see, because otherwise you had a
basically
solid,
bulletproof glass.
Yeah, but it's only down here, so it protects your legs, which is where he got shot. So he must have got shot through the front, through the chin bubble, or
if they really wanted to, like, if you were to put in everything in the armor package into 47, are you guys pretty encapsulated up there?
No.
That's what I.
The only thing it does, you can get what's called a neo kit for a non-combatant evacuation.
Yep.
And that fills the back up.
It doesn't help you up
It
front.
doesn't help. No, it doesn't. And, it just helps, you get civilians in the back.
It's like, what are you quietly saying here? We're going to protect the area of this helicopter that matters the most? Like,
well, it's funny because, the chest plate is only like this. You get soft armor, which isn't much. And the chest plate isn't big enough to cover all your vitals. And whenever I got in a situation where it was a hot infill, exfil, if I wasn't on the controls, I put my arms like this to try to put my arm bone, so if something got shot, it wouldn't rattle around inside my chest cavity.
Good luck with that, sir.
So, luckily it never happened to me.
So let's say he wasn't ending his career, which I have no idea where he was. He was as a W5. He'd been in for a while.
Yeah, so he was a flight lead.
Yep. And so he probably became what, a W-1 when he switched over from whatever he was doing in the military first to aviation? Is that because that's the track, right? You guys have to be warrants?
Yes.
Okay, so you've been flying for a while, because how many years is it between W1 to 2, 3, 4, and 5?
Oh, geez. To make W5, you're talking almost 20 years.
Okay, so he may have anyway been kind of seeing the over the bridge.
Yeah, actually, what's funny is I don't know him well.
Yeah.
And he came on and was like, wow, I think I know him, but I mean, I've been gone a while.
Yeah.
So I get my phone out, and sure enough, he's in my phone. And the last assignment I had in the 160th was I ran the training platoon, Green Platoon, and he was one of our students. And that's the last. So that was 2011, 2012. Yeah. So, and he was a W3, I think, at that point.
Okay. I know some guys who were awarded the Medal of Honor. I'm yet to meet a single person who, I'm going to say, is proud of it, even though that's not the right word. They're not thankful that they were awarded it, because almost every story is horrific to a nature that's hard to understand. Mm-hmm. I'd say a lot of them involve the death of people very proximal to them, close friends, just horrific situations. But the ones who stay active, they're active, but maybe not charging a machine gun nest anymore. They use them for a slightly different purpose. Today's episode is brought to you by Montana Knife Company. I tell you what, I just got back from the grand opening of their headquarters on the western edge of Missoula, and what a fantastic evolution. Thousands of people were there. They were waiting all night long. They were getting a tour of the knife building facility. That was the opening of their Black Rifle coffee shop there. A lot of people there from Black Rifle, obviously all the staff from Montana Knife Company. But you know why everybody else, not by everybody, do you know why they were all there? They were supporting the brand that Josh and Brandon and so many others, let's not forget Jess, Josh's wife, they have helped make. What they have built there is spectacular. There's no reason that people would spend, and I mean thousands of people would spend the night in line or show up at 4 o'clock in the morning for something that sucked. And let me tell you, that place didn't suck, nor do their knives. They have so much stuff going on right now, and I'm gonna give you a little spoiler alert. They're working on, I don't know if, I'm just going to go ahead and release it now. They're working on a folding knife. Yep, that's right. I said it. I'm sorry, Josh, if I wasn't supposed to. My bad, Brandon, but it's coming. It's not here yet. What do they have? I'm looking at steak knives online right now. They do a blade drop on Thursdays and Saturdays. They have stuff that is completely in stock at all times. They have chef's knives. They have skinning knives. They have knives for cattlemen. They have apparel. It is crazy what they have built, and I'm looking forward to them outgrowing their facility that I think they thought was going to house them for years, and I'm going to give them about 6 months before they're expanding out of it. But vertically integrating, bringing almost the entire creation process underneath one roof, bringing jobs back into America, bringing jobs into Montana, increasing the quality of life, the pay for those people in the Montana, the western Missoula area. It's phenomenal. It is difficult to get one of their knives when they're the newer ones or their limited releases. So head over to montanaknifecompany.com, check out what they have to offer, and just realize on those release dates, you need to act quickly. Honestly, I recommend going on there and buying like a sticker or a patch so they have your information saved so you can action it as quickly as possible, because otherwise you are going to be left behind. And it sucks. This has happened to me many times. I've had a knife taken out of my cart because I was manually putting in my credit card information. Don't be that guy. Learn from my mistakes. MontanaKnifeCompany.com. Trust me, you won't regret it. Back to the show.
Yeah, I kind of doubt, based on his time in service and his age and the extent of the injuries, he probably would never do another combat deployment. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't mean he couldn't end up, in SOAT-B doing the training. One of the guys that was shot on Anaconda, a guy named Chuck, he got hit in the femur, and took him about 2 years to get back on flight status. And we had to take him out with the flight surgeon, let him watch him, fly. And because you and I were talking earlier about how easy a Chinook can be to fly, when everything's working.
I was mocking that it doesn't have a tail rotor. I've never flown one, and I was just talking shit. Let's be real clear.
Honestly, it is.
Yeah.
If everything's working, it's a dream to fly.
That beginning of that sentence, though, is a real interesting
because
one.
Not everything's always working. I mean,
100%.
I always talk about, has your phone ever bricked up on you and you got to reset it? The aircraft does that. But, I turned off all the augment systems and made him, work the pedals.
And the flight surgeon wanted to see that.
Yeah.
Interesting. You figured they could just give them some type of other physiological test.
Yeah. Huh. I mean, that's the easiest way to do it. And because, Chuck is the guy that gave me my flight eval to flight lead. You know, I didn't take it easy on him, if you know what I mean.
Why would you? If you turn off all the systems, like you said, is that thing a little bit more of a buck and bronco?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
It's a challenge, yeah.
What gets difficult about it?
Well,
Other than the fact it's a ridiculous piece of machinery that is probably trying to break itself into pieces the second you turn it on.
yeah, it is, right? I mean, the rotor blades go opposite directions, you know, so there's no torque. But you know, there's no heading hold, there's no augmentation or dampening.
Yeah.
So, you know, this has been years since I've had to explain this, but,
Yeah.
you know, you move the cyclic and you can just let it go, typically. Well, in this case, you're just constantly, you know, turning butter, you know, and it's trying to do something like this. So if you've got somebody that's really good in the aircraft, you would never know that the AFCS is off. Yeah.
Man.
So, like I used to practice it all the time. When I got shot down in Anaconda, we lost all the systems and the generators, and I was flying it like that. And you know, I did a dust landing on the side of a hill, AFCS off. But that's because I practiced it all the time. And there are a lot of other guys do the same thing. You know.
Do you remember? I mean, I'll reference people. Michael, look up the episode the first time that Alan was on. I think it was 235. It was in the 230s. And we talked about Anaconda pretty specifically. But so if people want to hear that full story, I would reference them back to that episode or whatever Michael was about to tell us which one it was.
253.
253. I think there's a 3 and a 5 in there somewhere. Inverted them. Correct me if I'm wrong. You guys basically pitch over the top after absorbing a couple RPGs, just a lovely Sunday or whatever day it was.
Yeah.
And that was the event where Neil went out the back,
Yes.
correct? Didn't you lose all hydraulic power as well? And then some just, and in my mind, I imagine him just having a cup like this and just a little funnel in the back.
That's pretty close. That's about as close as you can get. There's, you know, kids today wouldn't understand what an oil can used to look like, right? You used to, you know, pop a hole in it and pour it, right? Well, that's what he had, is 3 cans of hydraulic fluid back there.
I don't feel like that's enough.
It's got the reservoir's about the size of that thing, and it's got a little tiny T-handle, you know, and he's just like, the throw in it's like that. So he's just pumping like crazy because it's really meant just to top off the system, not to fill it.
Do you remember what your headspace was as the aircraft essentially started shedding serviceable systems? I mean, do you remember, were you scared at all? Or were you going back to, here's the problem, work the problem, and just mechanically working your way through it?
That's exactly it. I mean, you just, you know, there's a saying, never quit flying the aircraft.
Yeah.
And everything went at once, first of all. You know, it's just like, you know.
As the RPG went through? Because didn't it have a battery or something?
Yeah, the RPG went through the left avionics compartment and through the left ammo can. So the ammo can, you know, sprayed a bunch of stuff in the back.
Yeah.
Did some damage to some of my crew chiefs. Big explosion. And it just went out the other side because all the doors were open. So there's no real overpressure. And then, you know, when it happened, you know, the MH-47 is all glass, right? There's no analog
Even back then,
gauges.
they were all glass.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a conversation to be had about steam gauges versus glass.
There is.
I have flown both, and I've only flown rotary with steam gauges, and I've actually, most of my fixed wing time was with glass. There's a real argument for both, actually.
Yeah, yeah, and especially with the helicopters, the analog. The thing that's nice about them, you know, your aircraft, does it have a mass moment indicator?
It does. Yeah, it's one of the main things you check. Yeah.
Right. So in the BK-117, which was the predecessor to the EC-145, it was analog, and you can move the cyclic while you're sitting on the ground.
That's how I do it.
And it would just go.
So what I'll do is, before I take off, I look over at the mass meter and I trim it out until it keeps dropping down, until any movement I make moves it up, and then you know you're going to have a great liftoff. Because if you don't do that, hypothetically, not that I've ever tested this, you give it a little bit of power and you're like, oh boy.
It's going to be tough. You know,
You're not paying attention. And the thing wants to go and you're like, oh. And then my instructor was like, hey, dipshit, before you shut it down, trim the mast indicator until it's back well in the green. I'm like, oh, okay. It's almost like you've done this before.
Yeah. Well, the problem with the glass is that it's so much more sensitive. Right, so you don't know which way the damn thing's going. You know, the newer ones have a circular mass moment, right? So it gives you a line that tells you where to move the cyclic.
Yeah.
But in the original, which we flew at West Point, it's linear, and you don't know which way to move it. You know, you just start moving. Oop, that's worse. Yeah, that's better.
Man.
So it could be a challenge.
So you say, this is the same thing my instructor has said as well many times. Like, and actually, even funny enough, my skydiving instructors, they're like, listen, if you're going to die, dive fighting, and meaning like deploy your handles, cut away, go like don't go in on a skydiving jump with any of your handles in the pockets. Like work the problem until the problem works you. From that RPG hit and you guys pitched over, how long do you think it was until you actually were wheels down on the ground though?
About 3 minutes.
Holy cow. 180 seconds of what I'm going to describe, having not been there, probably some pretty intense moments.
You know, I mean, because, you know, the RPG hits.
Yeah.
And then everything goes black. And, you know,
You're talking about everything you're looking at is just like
all the TV screens go black.
Awesome.
And the noise that accompanies those, like, you know, in your desktop computer
the
fan,
whirring. Yeah.
You can hear it go. It's like, oh crap! But yet the engines are still running.
Do you have any steam gauge indicators up there that are like even a backup like airspeed?
There was a backup, what we call the ESIS. There was. So it's funny though, because the ESIS, it's a BF Goodrich. It's about this big. It's a little attitude indicator.
Perfect.
And it did not have rotor RPM on it. It did not have engine indications. It just had speed, vertical speed, altitude.
And for people listening, those first two things he mentioned are pretty important when it comes into emergencies.
After this incident, because I was the senior 47 pilot, I was able to get those added to it. So now you get these two little squares in the corners that represent the engines. One's, you know, green, it's running. Red, it's not.
So you went from all the data you needed to tell the complete health of your 47 to black. And literally flying by the seat of your pants in your ears.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the crew chief in the back, only one of them was still plugged in.
Yeah.
And the other two were, I guess they were plugged in, but they were kind of like, you know, rattled from the RPG blowing up.
It's fair.
So the guy in the back's like, you know, taking fire in the cockpit, go, go, go. And he took off. And that's when Neil fell out of the back as we rotated.
Were you guys on the ground or were you in a
we were on the ground.
Okay.
So there's all kinds of, you know, you see all kinds of stories of what happened. You know, they were at a hover. No, I was on the ground. He got hit. Engines were still rolling.
Yeah.
And everybody was still on board. So I picked up, dove down the hill. And I thought because the engines were in reversionary, which is like a backup mode, so there's some droop that happens. And you can hear that droop. You know, you go to pull power and you hear,
Not what you want to hear.
No. And so I thought I lost an engine. And because at that altitude, that weight, you're not going to fly a single engine. So that's why I dove.
Yeah.
And the other thing is the Dishka started opening up on us. This is about a 50 cal, kind of 14.5.
Michael, go ahead and Google image a Dishka for people's viewing pleasure. I would not want to be on the receiving end of one of these things.
So
at what distance? 100 yards?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
And so by diving down the hill, you know, he couldn't get a beat on us. And I'm trying to gain airspeed.
Oh, my God.
So that...
Often seen in the back of...
is that one on the left, the tripod mounted?
Yeah. Often seen in the back of a Toyota Hilux.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Don't laugh, Michael. I'm dead serious. Google.
I know you are.
Google Dishka, Toyota Hilux, and prepare to see pictures from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Probably Iraq too, if I'm being honest.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
Plenty of those things shooting at me. But they, so we dove down, and then this is when the crew starts kind of coming back to me, and they're like, "Hey, we lost a guy in the LZ." I'm like, "No, nobody got off. Get a head count." And I'm just totally not believing that, you know, Neil fell out the back.
And at this point, the helicopter's flying normal-ish, at least?
Well, we're still in the dive.
Yeah.
And the crew chief's like, "Sir, both engines are running. You're okay. You can level off, right?" So I'm like, okay. And what I don't know is that the crew chief on the ramp tried to stop Roberts, and he falls out the back, and he's hanging from his gunner's tether. Right. So his toes are tickling the trees as I'm diving down, trying to...
What would you estimate your angle of bank was? Or nose down, I should
say.
say.
Nose down is probably 20 degrees nose up.
I'm going to say it was 45.
I mean,
I feel like it was aggressive. 20 degrees nose down is aggressive.
I put it, 30 is kind of the limit, you know, that you're supposed to, like, I would demonstrate that in training. It's like, here, it's 30 degrees nose low. And I'm like, "Whoa."
That's probably a very wild cockpit visual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because as you're looking out the window, you know, the trees and the ground are rushing up. And we get several thousand feet up.
Yeah. When you're in that dive, how far would you, or how high would you say you were AGL?
No more than 50 feet.
Okay. So you're basically terrain flying it down.
Because I'm trying to avoid the Dishka now.
Yeah.
So
reasonable.
Two things. Trying to keep my rotor RPM up is enough speed because I think I lost the engine. And then when the crew chiefs tell me, no, it's working, I was like, all right. You know, so I start pulling the power back in. We start to level off. I was like, all right. And then now they're explaining to me, you know, we lost a guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, crap. Got to go back and get him, right? So now I got to climb back up, turn back. And as I'm in the turn, I level off one time, and then I can't move the controls again. And now we're headed straight level. out over the main battle, which is out over what they call the Whale, which was a big terrain feature. And it was so surreal because I was just looking around. I can't move anything.
Like they were locked in position.
Yeah. They don't
And that was
move.
because of no hydraulic
No hydraulic fluid. So, the best example is you're in your car back when the key was in the steering wheel.
Yeah.
If you took the key out,
Yeah, you're totally locked in
it doesn't
place.
leave, right? So my co-pilot is like, well, maybe mine work. So he's trying to move it. And I swear he must have bent the cyclic, but
Yeah.
no, it didn't move. And then I was like, well, sorry guys, we're done. And
Oh, that's not a radio call you want to hear. No. I mean, imagine if you had been flying as opposed to out into the open, you had continued the turn and you were going back towards ascending terrain. You know?
And the funny thing is years ago, like when I was a W1, we would sit around and go, what would happen if you did have a dual hydraulic failure? Would you just keep going? Would the aircraft go out of control? Would you just climb until you ran out of lift? I don't know.
There's a lot of what ifs there. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
but it
depending-
just was going, straight and level. And all of a sudden, the controls kind of come back alive in my hand, right? And what I didn't realize is the crew chief in the back, like we were talking about, he poured a little hydraulic fluid in there. And as soon as he did, I could move the controls again. I was like, all right, guys, we're going back. So we turn again. And now I'm lined up on about 2, maybe 3 miles out, long final. And we're coming in and the controls stop again. Because you're always moving the controls.
Mm-hmm.
So I figure the leak was on the return side, because if it was on the pressure side, it just would have, boosh, one big pink mist cloud.
That makes sense.
So every time I moved the controls, I squirted out a bunch of fluid. So
as it moved, whatever it was moving, yeah.
So we had about 1 minute per can of fluid, right? And he had 3 cans. Now I didn't know that. This is how it was playing out. So
Yeah.
we're determining this as we go along. So it locks up again. Now I realize, well, now we're just going to crash on the, at 70 miles an hour.
That is not going to be pretty.
And it's a snow-covered LZ. The enemy's up there, and then they come back again, right? He poured another can in, and now I realize, okay, I got another chance here, but I can't land on the top of the hill because we'll never get off. And I've still got people on board. I'm responsible for my crew. I'm responsible for the rest of the SEALs. So I'm like, Chalk 2 is going to have to get him. That's Razor 04. And but we didn't have any radios, so you had to figure out that. But anyway, I turned left toward the valley where the big battle's going on, and I set up a rate of descent of about 300 foot a minute, 70 knots.
Okay.
And the idea being, if I get to the bottom and they lock up again, maybe you survive that if you don't run into something, because it looks pretty flat. And then my co-pilot starts reading out, all right, 70 knots, 300 foot, rate of descent. I'm like, how are you getting that? And he taps in the center of between 2 and he's like, duk, duk, duk. I was like, holy crap.
The one piece of information you guys
Because I was like so focused on just flying that I didn't, the rest, your peripheral vision. And then as soon as he did that, my peripheral vision came back.
Let's not forget you're on night vision goggles as well, which kill peripheral vision to begin with.
Yeah.
We should add that.
But
this is at nighttime.
But the thing is this, I did I was a talking head on a couple of the news programs when that helicopter hit in DC, and they're like, night vision goggles are terrible, and it's like, no, I said, when you just move your head, I mean, even now I find myself driving down the road at night, scanning, wires.
I've flown that airspace in DC in day and in night, and people think that night vision goggles give you an incredible advantage. There are so many lights in that particular area. Yeah. I would argue you might be able to see better with them flipped up.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, since we used to do so much urban training on the 160th, you got to the point where sometimes if you were really in the city, that one pilot might flip his goggles up, and the other one didn't. But if not, you're just constantly looking.
Yeah, you're cheating out the side.
You're looking out the side, and this is the one thing that, the more experience you have, as I was explaining on the news program, it's like, this guy had 1,000 hours, the instructor pilot. That's not a lot of time, For his unit, that's a lot of time. But in the world of night vision goggles, that's not a lot.
No.
But
no, it's not.
Yeah, so anyway, we're, doing that, and we come down the bottom, and this is where I said never quit flying the aircraft, because when we got down toward the bottom and the visual acuity started picking up and I could see the terrain kind of undulating, where I wanted to land was like where you are, and all of a sudden we had an uncommanded slide to the right, but I could not move the cyclic to stop it. So I tried all the other controls. I hit the pedals, things swung around in the direction of the slide. Now I'm going straight at a hill, and then I couldn't move it again. And as we hit the terrain, I just dropped the thrust, and the aircraft just settled.
And that was all the hydraulic fluid you guys had left?
That was it.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
All of that occurred.
Which is funny because Slabinski, we get on the bottom, and he's like, we're going back right now. And I'm like plotting our position on the map. I'm like, to where? He goes, to the top of the hill. We got to get our guy. I'm like, it's way over there.
Yeah.
It's 10 miles away. And he's like, no, it's right here. He's like, no, we've been flying for 3 minutes at, 70, 80 miles an hour.
Man, that is, I have such limited experience in the rotary world. And even when you know that they're going to introduce whatever, auto rotation, whatever it is, right? Like you're focused on the problem.
Yeah.
And it's not even a real problem. I can't imagine all of the things that you are describing, let alone legitimate risk to your life and everybody else's life. And you're just up there working it.
Yeah. I mean, what can you do? I mean, this is like, Sully, right? He loses the engines, ends up in the Hudson. You can only do what you can do. And afterwards, if you survive, then you can,
what if it for the rest of your life?
I can't believe that happened. Or I should have done this, or I should have done that.
If you would have been able to go back in to where you had just gotten shot out of, how would you have approached that? Would you have come in as fast as you could and just slammed on the brakes? How would you have, because you're going to be eating everything that they have on the way in.
Because the follow-on aircraft, Razor 01, got shot down. Same exact spot as me, minus about 25 feet or so.
Yeah, we'll call that the same spot.
Yeah, because he was on the upslope, whereas I was on the peak and was able to go down the downslope.
Yeah.
Had he been hit a little bit further, he might have been able to do the same thing I did.
But so knowing that you would have been going back into that, the first time you went in, you probably could have taken your time, assuming if you were thinking in your head, like maybe this isn't occupied. From what I've heard, people say they realize they're like, oh wow, there's a trench system, and so they realized it was. But how would you have approached it if you could have gone back in there?
Well, part of the problem at the time is the miniguns. Right, it's a little electric Gatling gun, 7.62. Shoots about 4,000 rounds a minute.
It's pretty amazing. There's 2 settings.
If it has electricity.
Yeah.
Right? So at the time, they were AC power. So with no generators, there's no guns. So there's no self-defense.
Yeah.
We would just take the abuse of the guns, and RPGs probably at this point. So we all would have died up there, I think.
Would you have come in steeper, flatter? Would you just try to pancake the thing back on the DZ?
Well, considering where I already was and the aircraft damaged.
Let's say you had one that wasn't damaged.
Then I would come in low and pop up, kind of like an oil rig.
So protect yourself with the terrain as much as possible, and then just try to get it down.
Yeah, and that's how Razor 04 got in there when he redelivered them back in. Is he came in initially kind of high, and the AC-130 was supposed to put down pre-assault fires, and they did not. So he went around and came back, and this time he came in low and just sort of popped them in there. So he kind of snuck up on them. You think, how can you do that with a Chinook?
It is hard to play hide and seek with the Chinook.
I used to do it at West Point with the cadets, right? So I used to fly the jump team. And so I'd come in, I could be there at 3 o'clock or whatever. Yeah. And it was the EC-145. And so I'd come in from different directions using the wind and the terrain, and I'd pop up on these guys, and almost every time I'd catch them by surprise.
Yeah.
I'm like, see, a helicopter, you heard me? Yeah. Could you tell where I was coming from? No.
God, especially in mountainous terrain and valleys too, where you're just sitting there looking completely the wrong direction, convinced that it's the right one. Michael, I just realized the upper lights aren't even plugged in. You didn't even do your job. Down there on that one over there, plug the upper lights in.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
No, the ones over there.
Great, now we have to start over.
Look.
Oh.
What do I even pay you for?
Yeah, I don't know actually.
Nor do I even know why I looked up there. See that, Michael?
You should be giving me
much
a
better.
pay decrease.
Would you like a pay decrease?
I deserve one.
God, that is so wild to me. I think I said this the first time that you were on too. I had no understanding and appreciation for what you guys were doing up there. Most of the time, because engines, turbines specifically, if I don't have a job, they put me directly to sleep. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm doing a C-130 jump, I am unconscious by the time they are even taxiing because you're just out.
Yeah.
And some of the best naps I ever had were actually in the back of Chinooks after the crew chief told me I couldn't get in the truck. But I did get in the truck, and he was just like, fucking whatever, man, do what you want to do. Like, if we're going to go down, we're going to go down. Like, just let me just reclining the seat. You guys are doing a lot up there. I'm amazed there hasn't been a Medal of Honor citation up until, what was that, last month?
Yeah. It sounds like he deserved it. Quite an operation, to do that off the ships, which is interesting when you go back to the formation of the unit. The reason that Desert One, the failure at Desert One, it was because they didn't use there's a couple reasons, but they intended to use Chinook helicopters instead of the 53s. And they didn't because they thought that the hardest part of the whole operation was taking off from a ship. So that's why they wanted naval aviators.
Why? You point the thing into the wind.
Yeah. Well, they wanted naval aviators for that. And then when the Delta guys figured out the Navy guys couldn't fly over land, they said, oh, we'll take the Marines. That's the next best thing. And then the Marines, they weren't really any better. They're used to, ship to shore, ship to ship, that kind of stuff. Whereas the Army pilots are used to the down low over the dirt.
Didn't a helicopter, did it go into a fuel bladder or another aircraft?
They flew into a C-130. So they were on the ground.
Brownout?
Yeah. Yeah. So they picked up, from what I understand from a guy that was there, he said the ground guide had the wands, like you see at the airport, right?
Yeah.
So he's given the helicopter the thing to come up to a hover and they're going to take off. They've already aborted the mission, right? Because there are not enough helicopters. And then the guy left the wands on, stuck them in his back pocket, one in each pocket, and walked into the C-130. And the only visual reference the helicopter pilot had was the wands.
Way.
So he stayed with the wands and just went right into the aircraft. It blew up, killed a bunch of guys.
Oh my God.
Yeah, isn't that something? I
I
mean,
had not heard that.
yeah, and I got that from...
And if you were in a brownout and that's all you could see, 100% you're following that.
And there was a guy in the plane, one of the Delta operators, who jumped out like the door, I guess, and on the side, jump door.
Yeah.
And he thought that they were under attack, so he pulled the pin on a grenade and jumped out of the thing. Right.
I like this story so far.
Well, here's the best part, right? So
What did he think he was being attacked by? A Decepticon?
he didn't know he was asleep, like you talked about, right? So he jumps out. He's still got this grenade in his hand, and they all rally up and they jump on another 130 and they're going to get out of there. And he goes up to the sergeant major, the Delta sergeant major. I used to know the names. I don't know them anymore. But he goes, "Hey, sergeant major, I got this grenade." And he's like, "Yeah, put it away." And he's like, "I don't have the pin." And he's like, "Oh shit!" Right? So they took duct tape and just wrapped his hand around the grenade.
I mean, that does work.
Yeah.
You could just
And when they
also-
got to Masira, they found a pin and
Holy shit.
took it out.
Yeah. If people really knew how moderately high speed the high speed people were. Like nobody would think so you're telling me a Delta guy woke up out of a dead sleep and thought the move was, I need the pin out of this grenade, which is going to have the effective range of your throwing distance.
Right.
And grenades are heavier than baseballs. So we'll say if you're a stud, 35 yards.
Yeah. And I have the story, Bush. I got this
I assume
from
it's
one of the guys that was there.
completely as the way you told it. That's how I want to imagine
It's
it.
at least, at least the gist of it. He got on the plane with a grenade with no pin.
Yeah.
And they just taped his hand up.
Good for him. I bet he was having one hell of a dream. I would like to talk to him about what dream he was having because I feel like that played into his decision.
Somebody's husband's home.
How did flying for you guys change from pre 9/11 to post? Because our world drastically shifted.
Oh, ours shifted tremendously.
I mean, we were from the conventional SEAL side. I remember doing river and stream crossings out at the desert training facility on these siphons, not even real water features. I mean, slanted concrete on the sides that you're like clawing your way up to try to get up as you're, just covered in water, and classes on here's how you can stow a line in your backpack. So as you're going across, the people can pay it out. Everything was maritime. I mean, foot in the water 100% of the time. My first gear list to Afghanistan had a dive mask on it.
Wow.
Which I took, by the way, because I can follow instructions. I did not take it on the subsequent trips, I'm going to be honest. But the way that buildings were cleared, it was so, the combat experience was so hypothetical. I remember there was one man at around Team 5 who had been one of the snipers that was supporting in Mogadishu. I was the only guy that I was aware of that had seen any combat experience. And you want to talk about a guy who could walk on water. Like if he told you to do something that you were going to do it. But I look back at the way we were training and it was so, and not negatively so, but it was, and not intentionally so, but it was rear view mirror based. We did some urban type stuff, but oh my God, comparative to what it became. I'm just curious what you guys' world looked like the day before 9/11 and the day after.
It was significantly different, especially when it came to how many aircraft we would use. Because the 160th guarantees, things, right? I'll guarantee I can get you on time at your target. With
Plus or minus how much, though?
30 seconds, which is really a
I
minute.
prefer 15, but I mean, it's fine.
I mean, you could do 0 just to make sense.
I've heard it all the way up to 60. I'm like, all of that's fine.
But the thing is, we're always guaranteeing that we'll give you whatever we've told you.
Yeah.
So there's always a spare or two, whatever, or redundancy built into the plan in some form or fashion. When we got to Afghanistan and we ended up having to put 2 teams in the same night, October 19th, 2001, the aircraft going to the higher mountain had to take 3 Chinooks, not 2, and we only had 4, which meant that I had to go by myself. And they sent 2 DAPs with me, but they couldn't get up in the mountains.
And DAPs, for people listening, are basically weaponized Blackhawks.
Yeah, those are my favorite gun platform.
God, I love it when you just see them starting to. You're like, yes, somebody is so fucked right now.
Yeah, and you know what they would do when I'd go off into the mountains is they would hang back in the lower terrain, just roll, right, trying to get shot at, so they could.
They're being fishermen.
Yeah,
yeah.
It was like, all right. Well.
So they made that call, I would imagine, based off weight and balance when they separated that, or just the ability for the aircraft to achieve the altitude with the load.
Yeah, because they were going to about 23,000 feet. I was only going about 12.
How high can those Chinooks go?
I've been to 25.
Could you do an out of ground effect hover up there?
I don't think so.
You think you could do an IG hover though, in ground effect hover?
Maybe.
Okay.
It would depend on the temperature.
Yeah.
And how heavy you were. The thing is, the aircraft did have some armor in it. The gunners had armor.
Yeah.
In the cockpit, we took it all out, but you still had some on the floor.
Okay.
But
did it change the way you guys flew? Like, how much urban stuff were you guys training on pre 9/11?
A lot.
Even like the way you guys were flying in. I mean, it is insane the places I have been put, specifically in a Little Bird. Whether it is just precision on the roof, which I feel like you guys were practicing that.
Yeah, we've been kicked out of every major city in the country a couple of times. From the black helicopters, landing on the skyscrapers.
I linked up with my old squadron once. I was back in San Diego, and they were up in LA, and they're like, "Hey, you want to come ride the Little Birds?" I'm like, "Sure, whatever." They were setting car alarms off. They were so low. But if you think about it, LA is probably the best town to do that in, because everybody's like, "Oh, it's the SEAL Team CBS TV show."
LA is huge.
Yeah.
And they've got helicopter routes, which is what makes it nice, right? So you're following these little drainage ditches and the homeless encampments, when a Chinook comes down.
Yeah, but I think you guys were taking their tent from one side of the encampment and helping them maneuver it to the other side.
Oh, I've moved tents.
A
couple of times in Afghanistan, you come into a FARP and the one of those A-frame tents is there, and it just picks up and comes over towards you. And
I can always tell people who haven't been around helicopters, because as they see it coming into land, they maneuver slightly towards it as they're getting their cell phone out.
Yeah.
And I go the other direction and take a knee with my back to the because I've been nuked so many times by the rotor wash. Actually, the closest I've ever been to probably Supermaning off a building was a fast rope underneath a 47. And I'm like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run from under the 47 out to the edge of the building, and then the rotor wash catches you about 10 steps out, and then you're like feet out in front of you, like, oh my God.
Years ago, so my oldest son and my youngest son were both in the military. The oldest is in the Navy as F-18 Wizzo. And when he was out of some phase of training, before he'd been to flight school or anything, I took him out on to what we call shock pad out at Fort Campbell. It's a training area. And we were doing a FARP with a Chinook, so forward arming and refueling point. So first thing in is some little birds, right? They come in, they land.
Little hornets.
Yeah, we come in, we put gas in them, and I took my son up to one. I was like, here, come on, let's go. So we walk up to it, and we see it, and we go back. They take off. Now what's coming in is 2 Chinooks, right, to the same points. Like, this is going to be different, right? So as we stood out there, they came in, and it's grassy, so you don't have the rocks. But, it's like, you're getting blown back, and I say, take a knee, you'll be all right. And he's like, wow, that's so much different. Like, and the crew chiefs are out there, in the winter doing that crap.
As long as you stay inside the rotor arc, you're going to be okay. If you get to that point where it starts doing this number on the way out, stand by.
It's the same thing if you're doing amphibs. So if you're doing like a ladder exfil, or a hoist or something like that, when the aircraft comes in, you get this like waves hitting you, and if you can hold on just for a minute, you're in this quiet spot.
It's a wall of air. Yeah.
Once the aircraft's
it's like the eye of a tornado. I would describe it as. Yeah.
And once you're on the inside, it's okay.
Stay on the inside though. Like I said, if you fast rope in and you're heavily loaded and you're going towards the edge of a building that does not have a barrier, I have elected to just fall and then start grabbing before.
Yeah. The other thing that changed is that a lot of our training pre 9/11 was always designed to succeed. Right? It wasn't designed to fail. We pat ourselves on the back. All right, look, hey, we did this very successfully. But the contingencies were always something that, because we planned our own event, the contingencies were always something we could deal with, because we typically would plan them into the operation anyway. Well, in about 1998, 99, we got a commander in our company. It was a former Delta operator, went to flight school. I call him Joe Gorst in the book. It's not his real name. But he was very intense, and he was big into realistic training. And to the point where...
And what year was this?
This was, I want to say late 98, maybe 99.
Early adopters.
And we were doing stuff that nobody else was doing. So, for example, with the terrain following radar, you can separate all the aircraft, say 5 aircraft, by 2 minutes apiece, right? And they're using the terrain following radar to do their thing. And then when you get to a visual area to join up, you go into a holding pattern, and everybody just slowly joins up on you, and off you go.
You kind of just racetrack until everybody's there? Okay.
Yeah. But you're all 2 minutes apart, so it goes like clockwork, right?
Yeah.
Well, what he did is something nobody else had thought of doing, is he told, out of a flight of 5, he told Chalk 3 to not show up. He's like, because the other aircraft can't see you, right? It's dark, and you're on the radar. So he just...
That is an interesting problem.
He just turned away and went to our destination. And so here you show up, boom, 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 everybody's there. Hey, we're missing an aircraft.
How many racetracks did you guys do to figure this one out?
Well, here's the problem. We didn't have enough gas to stay for long, and it wasn't in the plan. So
what you're describing is like an optimal training scenario. That's what I'm saying, an early adopter of somebody putting that stuff into realistic issues.
And that's why the plan during Anaconda, so I went separately from my wingman, 2 different infills. And, there's all kinds of comms fratricide. There's a lot of jamming going on, a lot of confusion. And I said, based on that scenario I just told you, I said, all right, we're going to link up at this checkpoint. If I don't show up within 15 minutes, you do a quick radio search and you leave, because you don't have the gas to wait and you have no idea where I am. And same thing with me. When I get there, I'm starting the clock. 15 minutes, I'm leaving. And so that, what Joe had made us think of, or experience, and then included was this, well, what do you do? And so he did all that kind of stuff. And he did these shoot down scenarios where long night, I'd fly from Campbell up to Cleveland, air refueling both ways, come back, it's a long night. And he said, here's a piece of paper with a grid on it. Go here. It's out in Fort Campbell somewhere. What are we doing? It's like, you'll see when we get there. You land, there's a pickup truck, with fresh pilots and crew, and we shut the aircraft down. We simulated we'd been shot down, zeroing all the ComSec and the computers and all that stuff. And then the maintenance guys came out, reloaded everything. This was a test to see. They've been saying for years they could do it. Now he wanted to see, could they do it? And they did. And then the new pilots and crew took the aircraft, and then I stayed up with my guys for like another 3 days.
A little E&E scenario?
Yeah, and it sucked. It was like in December.
That's the stuff that saves your life, though.
Yeah. Well, it's all stuff that I encountered,
in
my shoot down. For example, everything that did not have a little lanyard on it, I lost. So if I took out, a compass, the compass was on a lanyard, but my backup compass wasn't. Yeah. And I lost it. My finger light, lost. I had one, a flashlight with a little pull cord on it. I had that, but I lost everything else. So I learned after that to, what do I really need to keep? Yeah. And make sure there's a dummy cord on it.
One of the main things my instructor harps on is that if you're going to have stuff in the bird, it is positively secured. Yeah. Just nightmare stories of puffy jackets somehow just getting out the window on the tail rotor side. See ya, or everything. Backpacks, fine, have them, but everything is strapped in, because if it does go bad, you don't want to add the ballistic hazard of something flying around in there.
And not only that, being snapped in. We had a 47 in operating out of Sharana in Afghanistan, and I just left. And my replacement, his first night, they go out, brown out objective to the X, and the U.S. engineers had owned the base at one time, this area, and they'd put in a volleyball net, and the volleyball net had like telephone poles as the poles, and they sunk those babies in. And the Chinook came in, and the rotor blades, the forward blades, hit these poles that did not give, and the aircraft flipped over. Ugh. And so in the back is all these Delta operators hanging from their belt harness. You know, just the pilots told me to look back there, and everybody's just dangling. You know?
It's a good time for a team photo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, you got to be glass half full on that a little bit. You know, everything up before 9/11, I'm assuming other than in small engagements for you guys, it's all simulated gunfire. Mm-hmm. I mean, I guess in my job, I could be way more reactive because I could say, oh, if you're going to shoot at me, I can shoot back at you. Mm-hmm. You guys, at least up front, are a touch busier. How was that going from watching somebody with a BFA or blank firing adapter with like this flamethrower flame coming out of a 5.56 round? And then the next thing you know, you're on the end, the receiving end of Bell-fed 7.62. I mean, how was that for the guys?
It sucks. You know, I mean, there's no other way.
Because how do you train? I mean, how are you going to train for that? You're really not going to until you're in it.
Yeah, and knowing that you could die.
Yeah.
You know, we did a hot exfil one time, Army Rangers, and they were in contact on the day. They were waiting for night for us to come get them, and we knew it was going to be a hot exfil. And I came in. They were off to the left. And you can hear, over the aircraft, you can hear and feel the gunfire, and then all of a sudden the minigun opens up, to suppress fire. And it's like,
So they switch it to high. It's like, yeah.
Well, they stopped doing that. The AC guns had the 2 power, right? And they went to a DC powered gun, which
that's not fun. That's how you could tell the emotional state of the door gunner.
Yeah.
If he was really into it, we'd get a little bit of high burst.
Yeah, yeah. Those things are. I tell you, the old guns were basically muskets.
God,
it'd be like you'd go to shoot it in real life,
yeah.
And if it was too far forward or back, you got a kink in the belt, and it would just jam. You got a belt sep. So the DC guns, they routed them different. They were made by Dillon as opposed to
Dillon
GE.
Arrow, yeah.
Yeah, those things. I only had one malfunction that I couldn't take to the target in the entire time we had those things.
So how did you train those pilots who had gone from a hypothetical world of simulated gunfire to be prepared for when they're sitting up front, task saturated with flying these multi-million-dollar machines with people in the back, and real lead
That's a good question.
At them?
It's at stress inoculation, right? So during peacetime, I know the teams are the same way. We're essentially assholes to each other.
Yeah, but like we can shoot like wax bullets that are, you know what I mean? Like, and there's physical pain. You can't.
There's nothing. I mean, honestly,
because first off, that would be fun to shoot that at you guys, but also probably not best for the turbines to ingest all of that. You know what I mean? So you're limited in how much you can simulate.
I think, and I think really I'm trying to think of a way to describe this. You just have to do it, and once you've done it a couple of times, it's kind of no big deal. I mean, it's no fun.
Yeah.
You don't want to get hit because, there's a lot of important stuff back there, black boxes and wire bundles and things like that. And of course, people.
Yeah. Let's not forget the cockpit up front and it's not glass, plexiglass, whatever it's made out of.
Yeah. It's just, it's like gold inlaid plexiglass is all that's in the windows. And it's, it sucks.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no other way to put it.
Do you just tell guys, just work the problem? I mean, your priority is to fly the ship, so that's what you just focus on, regardless of what's going on around you.
Yeah, I never really had to say it. I mean, most of the 160th pilots are former operators of some sort. In the Chinook community, it's mostly Rangers and SF guys.
As the pilots. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So they get tired of being on the ground, right, and watching the Chinooks fly away, and they go to flight school.
Deeply understand that.
And so, if they do that, let's say you made sergeant, as a Ranger or a E6 or E7 as a Green Beret, and then you go to flight school, and then you did an assignment somewhere, and then came to us. You were very customer oriented. You understood what the ground force wanted. And not that the other pilots didn't, but it's just, maybe it's a little bit of a boost to the ground force to know that, hey, you've got a bunch of.
I think it just helps. Even again, did no aviation stuff in the military, but at the last 5 years when I was an officer, for the few times I likely was effective, I would directly associate that with an understanding of how the machine works from the enlisted side and knowing either a more efficient way to communicate, not a different way to communicate, but a more efficient way to communicate and achieve the end state. Yeah. That previous experience helps for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when you don't have to tell somebody what it is that you're looking for because you already know the headspace that they are in because you've been in that headspace.
Right.
Now we're talking.
So I think a lot of that has to play in there. Like we had a couple of guys that were Rangers in Mogadishu that were pilots with us. A couple of them had, Purple Hearts.
That's awesome. Not the Purple Heart part. The Enemy Marksmanship Award is highly overrated.
Yeah, it is. But guys that were in the convoy, and just going back and forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
But so those guys, and it's contagious.
Yeah.
What was it? One of my favorite stories is I think it's called Endurance. It's with Ernest Shackleton.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so he understood the chemistry and the people's mindset and how you had to keep like the naysayers away from the guys that could be influenced and stuff like that. So he would put groups of guys together in a way that their chemistry, didn't, it offset each other.
Yeah.
And so the same thing can happen in a cockpit or a crew. You'll battle roster guys together based on their chemistry, their skill sets. One guy, you don't necessarily have the two best guys in the cockpit. You might have one great guy and one okay guy, but that okay guy is probably like super cool under pressure.
Yeah.
Or he's got some
I don't know if you would
specialty.
want the two best guys in the same cockpit. You would want to probably aggregate that out a little bit.
Yeah. Well, the 160th, the cool thing is almost everybody's pretty decent. And, as a flight lead,
You guys wad stuff up.
You know what
once in a while.
I like the best about being a flight lead? There was two things. Number one is when you went TDY, you get your own room. And number two, you got a fully mission qualified co-pilot. Whereas all the other chocks in the flight have an FMQ as the guy in charge, and then he's got a BMQ, a basic mission qualified pilot.
Oh, really? I
Yeah.
didn't
So
realize
as
that.
you go back in the flight until you get to trail, right? So the two best are in lead and in trail, and everybody else is kind of like on a little rocking chair.
Oh no, we don't want the operators to know that. They'll be arguing to get in the front or the last helicopter.
Yeah. Although I would always put Chalk 2 as the Kazabak bird, so you could be on there, and if something happened, that Chalk 2, those are good guys too.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody's decent, but I would generally try to put trail as somebody good. And if I couldn't be lead, I always wanted to be trail.
Out of the Chinooks, the DAPs, and the Little Birds, the AHs and MHs, was there a platform that seemed to absorb more enemy fire than others, or was it pretty well spread out across?
Pretty well spread out. I mean,
Okay.
Everybody had their niche, right? So the
Yeah.
Little Birds are generally going to the top of the building, the MHs.
Yeah.
So, they're like, as we come in, because you always watch the ISR feeds, it shows like the overall objective, and all of a sudden it zooms in soda straw just on the cupola, and as the rest of us are landing, it's like, hey, come on, guys, we want to see ourselves, But, it seems to be just spread out. The Blackhawks are really almost as big as a Chinook.
Yeah.
When you consider the length of the tail boom. And so in a non-dusty environment, I can land just about anywhere a Blackhawk can.
Really?
Yeah. But when you get in a dusty environment, no, I can't even come close to doing
Can
what
you
they can
believe
do.
civilians now are just buying Blackhawks out of DRMO?
Yeah.
Just ripping around in personal Blackhawks. I mean, don't get me wrong. If I had Blackhawk money, I'd have a Blackhawk right now. We'd be doing this from the cockpit, flying around Glacier National
Well, that's
Park.
what, when I was flying at West Point, the superintendent would say, Chief, I want a Blackhawk, because we had the EC-145s.
Yeah.
I was like, sir, you don't want a Blackhawk? He's like, yeah, I do. I'm like,
First off, the 145 is probably a more capable platform than the Blackhawk.
It was perfect for what we were using it for, right? I mean, because I would fly him into DC, or colleges, Yale or something like that. You don't want to do that with a Blackhawk.
Yeah.
I could just come in with the Lakota, and it was quiet. We never got any noise complaints. Every summer when the Blackhawks come from Fort Drum and they do the summer training, it's all, noise complaints. And they're just flying the same profile I was doing. They weren't doing anything wrong. But
I feel like the maintenance costs on it. Well, I was going to say I feel like it's really high, but I feel like also if you can afford a Blackhawk, you probably can afford the maintenance.
Yeah.
Be like, my Lamborghini is super. I love this thing, but I can't afford the gas. I feel like you can probably have, if you have Lambo money, you probably have Lambo gas and insurance money too. But it's a wild world. People are just snapping them up, and some interesting paint schemes, and they are out there just banging corners in Blackhawks.
And a Blackhawk's an amazing aircraft. Of course, we all talk crap about each other's airframes, but it's a good airframe.
Yeah. Man. Unbelievable. You guys do crash from time to time, though, I will say. Even the 160th will wad them up from time to time.
Oh, yeah. I had one last summer. They actually flew into wires out of the Seattle area.
Did they survive it?
No.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking
it was
about.
a training flight.
So okay, in a training flight, nighttime or daytime?
Nighttime.
Had they done a site survey? Do you guys have software that can look for that? And obviously things can, if software isn't updated, things.
Yeah.
Like there was I don't know how much you follow civilian aviation. I think it was a Robinson, and nothing against Robinson, but I think it was loaded with 4 people. And there was I want to say it was some type of like a slackline wire. And they had published it in a NOTAM, which I'm going to be real honest, no pilots are really reading NOTAMs. Right. And it was only associated with an airport that was a distance away. So a guy was flying a path that he had done many, many times, all 4.
I think, I haven't seen the results yet, the actual accident, but sounds like kind of the same thing. They just, it's a local area. They were kind of familiar with it. It used to scare the crap out of me at West Point. We had these wires down by the front gate that during football games, I'd have to go fly around, do traffic duty after I did the jump team. Yeah. And I was always like, on a crappy day, those wires, you just can't see them. I knew they were there. Yeah. It's like in D.C., this is a funny story. So we're flying the superintendent to the Pentagon, and daytime in, it's going to be a nighttime exfil. And I couldn't get the safe open to get the goggles out. The combo was messed up, right? And I was like, what the hell? And they're like, sir, we got to go. I was like, all right, we're going unaided, right? And now I've been down there a lot, so I understood, where to go from the observatory up around the marina to the Pentagon. So we did that all unaided. And you have to be 100 feet or below because, Reagan, the traffic comes in right there.
It's a very tight
And
corridor.
so here I am, zero illume night, flying over the marina, and there's like cranes and masts and stuff. And I get just the white light on. But I know what's there. I was like, it was scary, and
note to self, understand the safe combo.
Yeah. I got back and said, what's wrong? I don't know.
Is a wire strike survivable as long as it doesn't interact with the rotor disc, or I would say come through the cockpit? Like if you can, like, you know what I mean? Like, is it ever survivable?
I don't think so. We had a Chinook on a training flight down, they were headed to Fort Rucker from Savannah. Brand new G model. They were flying along at like 900 feet in the clouds. They were not doing what they were supposed to do. Yeah. But they were just coupled up, letting the aircraft drive, and they had the digital map up. Yeah. And what they didn't realize is that there was a 1,000-foot antenna that was mislabeled on the map. It was about a half mile off. And they ran smack dab into this thing. And the wire came through, like the guy wires to the tower, came through the cockpit, and
like decapitated the cockpit essentially.
It was nasty. Shit. Yeah. And one of the pilots actually lived. The cockpit actually separated, and the main rotor stayed on board, or the forward rotor stayed on, and he just sort of came down, and the what was left of the cockpit landed in the trees backwards, and he unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out. Everybody else was killed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
I feel like that happens so fast too.
And we had one in Desert Storm, a D model, CH-47D, ran into an unlit tower. They were unaided. They, back then, not everybody flew goggles. Yeah.
Well, I also don't even think there were that many goggles to go around.
There weren't. Out of 16 air crews, we had, I want to say 6 crews, maybe 9, but I think it was 6.
Wow. Man.
And not everybody had to be qualified back then. So you could be a goggle qualified guy. Like I was in Korea one time in a regular unit, and I had to fly down south to Busan and fly back at night in the mountains with a guy who wasn't goggle qualified. So I had to fly unaided in the mountains. And we couldn't go up because it was a cloud deck. Yeah. And he wasn't like, his instrument ticket was expired.
Great.
So, he was a staff guy.
Awesome. No, thank you. How do, I know you've been out of the game for a bit, but how does the 160th keep pushing the training envelope to make sure they're ready for whatever is next? Is it reps? You think they'll ever move away from those platforms too? The 47s, the Blackhawks, and the Little Birds? Are they looking at new and emerging platforms?
They are. They're looking at the V280, I think it is, the Valor.
I don't know which one that. I know the V22 is the Osprey.
It's a tilt rotor.
Okay.
But it looks like, the way I would describe it looks like a Blackhawk with tilt rotor. So instead of having a rotor system.
Was it V280? We're going to need to
so.
see a picture of this, Michael. V, Victor. I would imagine just like any other tier one, they're looking, like you want to stay on the cutting edge.
Yeah, because it'll do close to 300 knots.
Really?
Yeah. The best you're going to get in helicopters, 220 or something like that. Yeah,
what?
That's it right there. Yeah.
That is basically a Black Hawk fuselage.
And what's cool
V-tail.
about that?
Interesting.
See how the propellers go up and the
Yeah.
nacelles stay like this? So now you can have door guns. See, the problem with the V-22 is the whole engine nacelle moves, and there's no way to
Go back one
side
picture,
firing
man.
guns.
Oh, look at that. So you see the front of it, Michael, how the front of the nacelle goes up?
The whole thing doesn't rotate.
Well, before, pull up a picture of a V-22 hovering and pull them up side by side. You'll be able to see the exact.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking
and this,
about.
by the way, is the original tilt rotor design from the 50s.
The V-22 killed a lot of people in certification. So you see how the nacelle or the exhaust is coming down with that, Michael? Mm-hmm. On the picture on the right. Now look at the one. You'll have to switch to the other picture. That's in flight. But if you go to the, see how it like snaps in half? So you'd have a clear view underneath the wing. Wow. 300 knots.
Yeah. It's sweet. Like I did a article for Stars and Stripes on this.
Yeah.
And it was an op-ed. And I was talking about, I don't remember the distances and times now, but we, Operation Enduring Freedom Philippines was happening right after 9/11 as well. And we had 47s flying out of Cebu down to Basilan Island. And that's about 300 or 400 miles one way. And they were doing that with tankers, tanker support, long nights. This aircraft, the one that's behind there, could do it, there and back, just that much faster. Instead of flying 120, he's doing 300.
How long would it take, let's say, a unit like the 160th? First off, let's say that the aircraft is built and certified and enters military service. How long would it take them from when they got their hands on that, and let's say they could get as many as they wanted, to being FMQ'd with that platform? We're talking years to just finally get an understanding of how the thing
I would
flies?
guess 2 years.
Okay.
Because we had the G model, the MH-47G, to replace the Echo, and it was a significant difference in the cockpit. The aircraft still flew the same, so that wasn't the issue. It was the software, how you build a flight plan, how do you control things, right? And the initial work they did was horrible. It was Rockwell Collins, who you'd think would do a great job, but they mixed their experience from other airframes into this thing, and it just didn't work. So, for example, something like the color scheme in the MFDs, right? They had magenta as one of the colors. But the problem in a dark cockpit, when you dim the MFDs down, you can't see magenta when it's dim.
MFD is a multifunction display.
So the glass cockpit, right?
Yeah.
So the little TV screens. So when you would dim it down to where people don't see you and shoot at you,
you also can't see where you are with your magenta line. That's excellent.
See it. So we changed the colors, and I remember the engineers just going, "Why would you come here?" You go into dark cockpit, dim it down, and go, "This is how we fly."
Yeah.
Well, you can't read it.
Yeah, no shit.
Kidding.
That's why
That's
you're
what
here.
I'm telling you.
So how would they do that, though? Would they dedicate an entire squadron, for lack of a better term, to be offline for that 2 years till they could get up and running with that? Like a whole group of people that are just...
Well, it would start with SOAT-B, right? So the Special Operations Training Battalion first SIMO, Systems Integration Maintenance Office. They develop the hardware and the software.
Yep.
Then they bring it over to SOAT-B, and they have some experienced guys working it, flying it.
Just trying to bend the thing.
After they get the airworthiness release. And so they'll go out and they'll figure out what they do and don't like about it.
Yep.
They'll make changes, which is nice about the 160th, because the regular Army was fielding the F model Chinook, which is the same cockpit, same hardware, but the software was about 5 versions behind ours.
Ugh.
And they couldn't change it, and they hated it. And so they brought me down because I was the senior pilot, and I was down with DES, which is the Directorate of Evaluation Standards. And they're like, "Al, tell us what we're doing wrong with this." I'm like, "Well, you got the wrong software." I said, "That sucks. We had that, and we did not like it."
Yeah.
And I showed them an example of what we had. I was like, "This is what we've done."
And they probably went, "That's amazing. That's exactly what we're trying to do, but
Right.
we can't get it."
Right. And they eventually kind of did,
Yeah.
but initially they had that pain. So anyway, you go back to the 160th. So you've got this. That's why these organizations within the organization exist, so you can develop, and then you can do a spiral development. So it continues to, go out into improvements, and then you field it to a company. Right, an entire company will just stand down, go over to do training, and then they'll go out on what we call a UMT, unit mission training, and they'll go out in all the environments. They'll go to Colorado in the mountains. They'll go somewhere to hit a ship,
Just fly the piss out of it.
and they'll do everything they can to learn it really quick because they're going to be the next ones to deploy it in combat. And then when those guys do that, now they have lessons learned from overseas, and now they'll come back onesies and twosies and go out with whatever the next company is that stands down, and they'll be like a liaison to them, and they'll be like, go hang out with them, So it's a really neat process.
How old are the designs for the 47s, the 60s, and the Little Birds? I mean, Little Birds are what? I mean, Magnum PI was flying around in a Little Bird.
Oh, yeah.
So we're talking 80s, 70s. Yeah. What about the 47s and the 60s? Are they about the same?
Well, no, the 47s were developed for Vietnam.
Okay. Oh, wow.
For the 101st, right? Actually, the 10th, I can't remember the designation before they were the 101st, for first air assault test or something like that.
Okay.
And so they built the Chinooks so the 101st could go to Vietnam, because without the Chinooks, they didn't have the lift capacity they needed for some of the stuff. I don't remember the details.
So it's time.
But it was built 1959, 1961, something like that.
Okay.
And
so it's time.
Yeah. And, so as there's a poster that Boeing put out one time. It's called Only the Silhouette Remains the Same. So it looks like a Chinook. You can tell, oh, it's a Chinook. I used to fly those in Vietnam. Yeah, come take a look,
Same as the 130s now. You're looking at, I was in a commercial airliner taxiing by like an Air National Guard. Mm-hmm. Like that looks like a C-130, but that is a very interesting blade design up front.
Yeah, the J models.
Yeah.
Right? It's got a curve to it.
Yeah, very.
I think the fuselage is 12 feet longer.
Yeah, but I bet you somewhere in there is a stamp that says 1968.
Oh, yeah.
From the frame itself.
There's Chinooks that I think, so now what they're doing is there's 72 of them, right? When I first got to the 160th, we had 24 E models. That was it. And the old D model adverse weather cockpits went to Savannah, and there was 12 of those. And now there's 72, but they're sending them all to get turned into beer cans now.
Really?
Yeah. So they're all doing new builds, because all of these things were some of the original Chinook airframes,
I feel like
models.
There's some people out there with some Chinook money, and they should be able to also buy a Chinook.
That'd be nice, right?
If we're going to DRM a Black Hawk, I think Diesel Dave needs a Chinook. I don't know what kind of money a Chinook costs. I feel like it's a tremendous operating cost per hour.
When I left, the G models were $62 million a copy with a turn-in. So you had to turn in an aircraft, basically.
Yeah, but that's government pricing. Civilian could probably get that for $6.2 million. Not that that's a small amount of money by any stretch.
I think now they're like 80 or 90 million, and
good God,
like Columbia Helicopter has them. They use them for logging and for.
They're out here. It's a 47.
Yep.
The firefighters. Yep. I think they're based out of Billings, but they rotate through sometimes.
Yeah,
they'll park it over.
I have friends that do that.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's a big bird. So speaking of Chinooks, I swear to God, every year, and you'll understand your direct tie into this. This narrative comes around about Extortion 17, where it was a sacrifice operation where Obama sold out Gold Squadron because of Red Squadron actioning Neptune Spear. And unfortunately, there is at least one that I know of, family member, that helps perpetuate this.
Right.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you were the investigating officer for that accident or event.
No, I wasn't. I was involved, but not as the...
So you may not have been the person who actually bottom lined it, but I'm hoping that we could walk through that a little bit. And one, I have tried to explain to people the complete and utter unrealistic nature that I don't even know how you would coordinate that, by the way.
No, you couldn't. And
you
because,
couldn't. Yeah.
Extortion, first of all, it was a 47D, right? So it was a conventional aircraft. That family member you're talking about, I think, is the one that was saying, why don't they give us the black box? That would tell us everything. Well, there was no voice data recorder on those things. Only the Echoes and the Golfs have those.
Also, from my understanding, the thing burned for hours.
Yeah.
So
magnesium and fuel, jet fuel. But the other thing with that aircraft is it wasn't, the problem, the easiest way to boil it down is that when CAG left Iraq and they went to Afghanistan, they now had priority on the rotor wing platforms, the soft platforms. So everybody else had to GAF. So that's the SEALs doing the ground assault force. And then you could have what they call upper tune air, right? So you get somebody that's not busy and they come help you.
Yeah.
And,
It's a scheduling issue for people
Right.
listening. If it's available, you could ask.
Right, but here's the thing. In order for a conventional aircraft to fly a Tier 1 unit, you had to meet certain criteria. And like you had to be in country for a period of time. You had to, pilots had to have so many hours, all that stuff. So the Extortion guys did, right? And so they could do what's called an offset infill. You know, they weren't even supposed to do what we call to the Y, which is 300 meters from the target, or to the X, because they don't have the same defensive armament and a bunch of other things. So anyway, they can only do an offset infill. So that unit was ripping out, right? They were relief in place, and the new unit was coming in, and they were out doing a local area orientation, right? So what that encompasses is, you know, so you're the new pilot coming in, I'm the old guy going out. We get in the cockpit together, and we fly around to all the forward operating bases, and I show you, this is how you get in and out of this FARP. This is where you can watch out over here. There's a big balloon on a tether. You know, you come at this base from this.
We do the same thing on the ground force. We do a left seat, right seat. We leave a headquarters contingent, or we send one over early.
Right.
You get atmospherics on the ground, operational tempo.
So here are these guys doing that, and their Blue Force tracker, right, the beacon that tells people back in the TOC, it screens like this up on the wall.
Yeah.
Oh, we need a helicopter to take, you know, Gold Squadron out to reinforce the Rangers. You know, they're under fire. Okay. Oh, look, Extortion 17 is certified to move Tier 1 forces. Send them. Well, these guys, that wasn't in their mission brief. It wasn't anything they analyzed. They're out checking out, you know, FOBs and FARPs. And they have never flown together. The two pilots and half the crew in the back is also different units. So there's a little bit of a disconnect, because, you know, the one thing about battle rostering in the 160th is, you know, the guy next to you, you know what he's going to do or not do. You know, a lot of times you don't even have to say it. It's just known. And so they get sent in there, you know, and they...
Is it all in a cycle of darkness as well? Like as I'm saying, so yeah, I mean, everything you're describing wasn't like a multi-day process.
No.
It was somebody probably called in troops in contact. They looked at what they had available. It wouldn't be incredibly uncommon for a Tier 1 unit to be response force like that. You're going to go. I mean, sometimes, we would have other units doing the exact same thing for us on a contingency basis. So it sounds like they got the call, got the bird there as fast as they could. I'd heard there was some decision about whether splitting into 2 helicopters and going a lower route, or 1 helicopter and going over a piece of terrain, which is, I believe, what they chose, correct?
They, as far what I understand, they drove right up the high-speed avenue approach, because they lumped everybody into one aircraft. And so now it's heavier. Now it's not going up or around. It's going to go right up the road. And, you know, so think of a V-shaped valley, right? Instead of running at the bottom of the V, where it's the lowest, where you have the most payload capacity, but you have no room to maneuver. And one of the problems with Army aviation, well, military rotor wing aviation in general, is when you get shot at, people have a tendency of trying to dive down away, right? Like I did on the hill.
Yeah, but you were on a mountaintop.
But that's only good if you can put terrain between you and the guy shooting at you, right?
Yeah.
So what happens, and I almost was the chief of the aviation shoot-down assessment team, so that's how I know some of this stuff, is I've watched some of the videos of like a Black Hawk, an Air Force Black Hawk, getting shot at, and he's running down a valley just like what they did in Extortion, and he's getting shot at from all these different directions. And as they're talking on the ICS, you can hear the bullets hitting, and they're just zipping around. They can't go any lower, but they're doing this. And the only thing they didn't do was go up at all, right? And there's a maneuver called the Wells maneuver, where you essentially, when you get shot at, instead of diving down and away or turning, you actually climb a little bit, and then you start to turn, and everything's done so that the gunner can't see you doing it. He doesn't know that you've just climbed up a little bit. He doesn't know that
it's changing
you've
the geometry.
Every 9 seconds, you're doing something different. So the gunner can't anticipate what you're doing, because they're used to helicopters just diving down and trying to break contact. Well, there's nowhere to go if you're already flying at the bottom of the V.
Yeah.
You know, like if it had been me doing that based on my experiences, you know, I would have found a way to get around. I would not have gone up that main avenue approach, you know. And that's kind of what happened on Red Wings, you know, with Turbine 3-3. You know, they went right up the spine of the ridge.
Oh, you're talking about the one that got shot down?
Yeah.
Did the RPG actually go into the back of the helicopter on that one?
Yeah, right up into the ramp area. We believe it hit the aft transmission or the C box, or the combined transmission. And, you know, it's funny, you talk about extortion, Turbine 3.3, we still have people. I did an interview for an article that's going to the Smithsonian sometime this summer, and they were talking about that, and a couple of SEALs, I don't know from who, said that they know that there's ISR footage of the battle of the 4 original guys, Marcus and Murphy.
I have
and all
heard
stuff.
of that.
Yeah,
I've heard
there's
people
not.
saying, I was going to say, I've heard people saying that.
Yeah.
I've never met somebody who says they have seen it.
Yeah, there's not. The only
Yeah, because a platform, and again, this is what people don't understand about ISR, which we're largely talking about predators, or what does it stand for? Intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance.
Yeah.
Predator, Reaper. It would have had to have been overhead to begin with for that to exist.
Right.
They might have surged it there once they got the red star cluster, like metaphorical red star cluster, which is everybody come help me.
right, but they didn't have that. They had an A-10 with a lightning pod.
Yeah.
So what we call non-standard ISR. So it's an A-10 overhead, and that's after the whole compromise had happened. So there's none, but they insist that it exists. And the guy I was talking that wrote the article is like, he's seen all the classified materials, and he's like, there's no, and the same thing is everybody thinks a man-pad brought it down. It's like, no, it's an RPG. I watched it on a feed, from the A-10, and if it were a man-pad, the flares would have shot out. None of that happened. So
I don't know how to stop the rumor with extortion. It's rough to see, and personally, I'm biased on this one because I knew the vast majority of people on that.
Right, you were
helicopter.
gold, right?
I was at gold, and I was in 2 Troop, and that was 2 Troop of gold. I'm not saying I would have been on the helicopter if I had stayed there. I spent the minimum amount of time in that command. I'm just saying, a guy from my BUDS class, Jonas Kelsaw, who was enlisted in BUDS and then went to college right after graduating BUDS before going into the SEAL teams, was the, what would he have been? Ground Force Commander. I don't know if he was the commanding officer of gold at that time, but he was at least the GFC that night. I mean, it's rough, and I don't understand why some of those things get so sticky, and why Red Wings is a really touchy one in the community, because externally it could be viewed as the makings of a great Hollywood movie, but internally it is full of lessons learned that didn't quite make it into the movie. And I don't even know if people would have understood those lessons learned, but it's taught as not a success. It's taught as a failure and a breakdown of so many things. But that to me I don't understand why people get so, to use Michael's word, vehemently, which is not the way you say it. So now I always say it incorrectly because he demanded that. He just was like, that's how you say it. They won't let it go.
Yeah.
And what is it supposed to show? I mean, and I know the argument because the discussion basically comes down to this. Did, as the movie shows, Marcus stay and fight until he was almost out of ammunition, or did the opposite of that occur? Those are basically the two narratives.
Right.
And there's some real weird things in there, like why were there 2 after actions that were written? Why was he asked to write another one? Why did the military essentially issue him an editor and a publisher write it? I mean, I know the answer to that because they knew they could turn it into a great recruiting piece. And I very barely know Marcus. I've hung out with him 2 times. And I'm not trying to throw shade at him in any way, because the guy has to live with whatever the reality on the ground is. That man has to live with it for the rest of his life. So I'm not trying to throw shade at it. But both sides of that conversation have these things that they have their talons in, and they won't let them go.
Yeah.
It's the same thing with extortion. Like I can't fathom what it would feel like to be a family member losing somebody in that situation, wanting and demanding answers that, like the black box, if they can't even give it to you, but you are convinced that it does exist, and because you're not getting it, it's therefore a conspiracy. And then let's attach that to the president just waking up and going to the Oval Office one morning over his coffee and just saying, you know what, let's just sacrifice Gold Squadron because that makes sense in any universe.
Right. And just think of, Occam's razor, right? The simplest, right?
For sure.
So if you're a group of bad guys and you've got the Rangers, under fire, and you feel like you're outmaneuvering them and you may do some serious damage on them, what's going to come? You know that the Americans are going to send
especially
helicopters.
over a decade deep into that.
Right. They know. It's,
Yeah.
What did Napoleon say? Don't fight your enemy too much or they'll know your
Yeah.
ways, right? So all you got to do, and this is why I said, what's different between me and the guys from my time frame is we learned, with blood, what you do and you don't do, and you don't just fly right up the valley because it's the quickest way in. I would always guys used to hate when I would come over. At least I always felt that way because I would I'd always make them do things the hard way.
Yeah.
It would be like, hey, let's take, the SEALs want to go here. All right, well, let's go like this. No, we're going to come this way over the shittiest terrain, and we're going to come in. And they're like, oh, wow, you know what the approach is going to be like going in there? I'm like, yeah, they won't expect us.
Also,
all our guns are pointing this way.
Don't you guys love that shit though up front? Like, I figured you guys would love to come in the most difficult way and just bend those machines to the best of your ability.
Yeah, see, that's because you're definitely. But that's what I used to say all the time was that I always tried to leave myself an out. Right. And I was thinking about you flying around here in your helicopter.
I always have an out.
You gotta, right?
Yep.
The SEALs wouldn't let me have one. They'd be like, we want to land at the end of this box canyon. But if I do that and we brown out, there's nowhere for me to go and I don't have enough power to get out of there. Yeah, but you'll do it.
That works until it doesn't.
Well, and then I ended up doing it, and we've done stuff. We talked last time I was here about doing a one-wheel landing to exfil guys.
Yeah. Oh, there's iconic pictures of you guys doing that stuff.
And it's like, I don't want to. And they're like, yeah, but you can. I'm like, but I don't want to.
Also, it's sunny out. It's 2 hours past sunrise. Go ahead and come in.
Yeah. Right. The AC's already gone because,
They're like, yeah, we're out of here. We can see Eastern glow.
Yeah, the sun's going to come up. We're leaving.
I mean, there's a time to go up the gut. I mean, if somebody is calling a Casevac and it is life, limb, eyesight, I'm like, go for it. Yeah.
But even that, Andy, what I would do on a hot exfil for a Casevac, let's say I don't have the medic on board, it's Chalk 2, is I'd escort him in essentially. He'd come in low, I'd come in high, and I would do everything I could to draw attention to me. It's like, here, shoot at me. I'm still moving. I'm not maneuvering, to land. Let him come in and do this. And this worked several times.
Is it safer actually once you guys are on the ground? Because sometimes, especially in an urban environment, they don't have direct line of sight.
Yeah, only if you can block.
Okay.
If you have cover.
Yeah.
Concealment's no good.
Concealment works in hide and seek, though. Don't confuse the two in a gunfight.
Yeah, no.
Both work in hide and seek. One's way better in a ballistic environment. Yeah, I figured you guys were always looking for the most challenging way up. I just figure aviators love doing aviator stuff, so
they make great stories, but they're no fun to do. It's like I was thinking on the way here, talking about air refueling. Mm-hmm. So air refueling can be fun and terrifying all in the same flight. Just as simple as, you got a nice smooth night, you're plugging away, everything's good. And it's smooth because it's, a warm front with low clouds, but it's looking pretty good. And all of a sudden the tanker drags you into a frickin' cloud. Now all you can see is the hose and the markings, and you might not even see the tanker. But you got.
Why would the tanker do that to you guys? Because he's got a windshield too.
I think they're up there eating cornflakes. It's like, oh, hey, give me some more milk.
No, they're probably just like, they have the little dial. They're like, give me 3 left on the heading. We're putting them right through that cloud.
Sometimes, and then what they do is they'll turn, but once you're in the cloud, you got to just stay level. But what they'll do is they'll turn out of it.
Oh my God!
And it's really a challenge to stay with the tanker. And once you're on the hose, you don't want to get off.
No.
And
what's the fuel flow like on that thing? And we're talking about, for people listening, the big extended boom that's usually on the right hand side, isn't it?
Yes, on the right hand side.
What kind of fuel flow are you getting in that?
750 pounds a minute.
Really?
Yeah.
And a pound or 7 pounds of Jet A is going to be about a gallon, so that's about 100. We'll call it 100 gallons a minute.
Yeah, it's quick. I mean, it takes. You can fill up 13,000 pounds of gas in about 3-4 minutes.
I like the ones where the rotors, they cut off the hose. Those are my favorite.
That happens.
I know. They're on the internet.
Yeah, it's
the blades take it though. For a little. I mean, I'm not saying the pilots are enjoying it, and they might have an emergency on their hand.
Where they tear up the aircraft is on landing. So we were talking earlier that when you move the cyclic forward on a Chinook, the blades don't tilt. Mm-hmm. They actually decrease the pitch in the forward and increase it in the aft, and the whole airframe tilts. So what they do is they have these little computers that will tilt the rotors once you get in forward flight, and it gives you a more level attitude. And those are called longitudinal cyclic trims.
That makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, you'd be way nose down.
Right. Yeah. Now, the problem with that is that when you're doing air refueling, these things can move based on what the computers sense. So you put them in manual so they can't move. So you're doing 120 knots, you lock these things in place, now you just hit the hose, and you take a chunk of your blade off like this, and now you're like a washing machine out of balance, and you're just looking down and going, okay, let's put this on the ground, right?
So you said that can't feel amazing when it starts shaking like
no,
that.
when the RPG came through my aircraft, parts of what I think was probably the ammo can came out the other side of the aircraft and took a chunk out of the rotor blade, and that thing, I didn't even describe how it was flying like this.
Yeah.
But so here's these guys, they hit the hose, now they're all freaked out because they don't want the aircraft to come apart and they want to just get it on the ground. They never, I know of 3 incidents that this happened in my time there. Not one of them remembered to put the LCTs back in auto. So when they touch down, the rotor blades are still tilted at 120 knots. Damn. So you don't slow down. You get down, you get the forward gear down, and you're still getting pulled along because the rotor blades are tilted in a way that they're not supposed to be.
Michael, this one's worth Did you find any?
Yeah, I'm actively searching.
Just go onto YouTube and put helicopter midair refueling chop hose. It's probably going to be a 53.
I don't know. Their probe tip sticks out from the rotor. So in a Chinook, it's like 8 feet inside the rotor disc. So you've got to make contact. So you get about 5 feet away from the hose.
Yeah.
And then once it's ready to move, you move to contact and you move quick. And the idea is hit it, get connected. And then once it's on the probe, it's there, and then it can't fly up and down into the rotor system.
Allegedly.
Well, you can. I've seen people toss it off,
The very first target we hit with you guys in Iraq in 2003 was that Chem Bio target, and I think it was about 4 hours each way. Yeah. We refueled on the way in and the way out. I chose to look out the window very briefly.
I know that.
And then said, no, I'm just going to sit down and pretend like this isn't happening right now.
Listen.
Because they were on both sides, too.
We were going into Yemen for a target with DevGru, and one of the tankers was going to also be like a backup FARP and a wet wing Kazovac kind of thing. So we refueled on the way in, or up, I think that's the Red Sea. You got Yemen and Eritrea and Ethiopia over here. And so you're going up there, and the up and down drafts are terrible. And the drogue, the paradrogue is going up and down below the rotor. And you get on there, and boy, once you got on, and I remember the troop chief was on my aircraft, and he's looking out the window, and he's like, holy shit, that sucks. He goes, I don't ever want to see that again. I was like,
yeah, unplug and go turn around.
But it was funny because one of the guys didn't get enough gas, and the tanker that's supposed to be on the ground starts accelerating away, right? And the Chinook wouldn't let him go, And
just chasing him down.
So you're doing 130. They were doing like 160 still on the hose, and the guy's like trying to outrun him, and finally they just pulled away, but he got his gas.
Good God. What'd you find, Michelle? Today's episode is brought to you by David, the industry leader in protein bars. There's 2 different types of bars I'm going to talk about today. First, there is the gold, which is actually in this gold wrapping. I have these in the studio. These are my go-to right after jiu-jitsu, in between episodes, or just when I want to get a high-protein snack. 28 grams of protein, 150 calories, 0 grams of sugar. So that equates to a 75% calorie from protein, the highest protein to calorie ratio of any leading bar on the market. Each of these bars has an indulgent, doughy texture, studded with satisfying chunks and airy crisps. I can attest to that. Chocolate chip cookie dough, peanut butter, chocolate chunks, salted peanut butter, fudge brownie, cinnamon roll, blueberry pie, red velvet, and cake batter. I've talked about this before. I often will use these at night if I have to satiate my sweet tooth, because I'd rather get the protein as opposed to just a bolus of sugar. They have a new bar, the Bronze Bar. 20 grams of protein, 150 calories, also 0 grams of sugar. This is a 53% CFP, or calories from protein ratio. Another industry-leading protein to calorie ratio. Each of the Bronze Bars is going to have a smooth marshmallow base with flavor-filled layering, airy crisps, and chocolate-flavored coating, providing a different taste and texture profile compared to the Hero Gold line. Cookie dough, caramel chocolate crunch, double chocolate crunch, peanut butter chocolate crunch, s'mores chocolate crunch. That's what you're going to be getting yourself with the Bronze Bar. Don't just take my word for it. Try it yourself. David is offering listeners a special deal. Buy 4 cartons and get the 5th free when you go to davidprotein.com/clearedhot. That's davidprotein.com/clearedhot. And if you prefer to shop in person, David is available at leading retailers nationwide, including Target, Walmart, Kroger, Wegmans, and the Vitamin Shop. Just check out their store locator and find a location near you. Back to the show.
Didn't find cutting the hose.
Yes, you did.
Just
This is the beginning of
There he goes. Yep.
He cut off his own probe.
yeah.
Yeah. Now, see, that's what a Chinook can't do.
You know what though?
Because
I'd say just try to put it back in the old drogue chute there. I mean, like what's? I'm sure you probably. Oh my God!
Yeah.
So those probes are probably made out of a harder material than
It's
the.
foam wrapped in Kevlar.
Okay, what kind? I don't. I'll be honest with you. I don't even understand how that helicopter is still flying. One of those blades is incredibly damaged, if not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's that whole.
This is actually the video I was thinking in my mind. For whatever reason, I thought they had hit the drogue chute.
Yeah.
That
Well, the
is-
same thing happens. I mean, we.
Yeah.
You know, you just cut off the last 5 feet of it there. And you see little white markings all the way up. Those are hose markings, so you can see how far the hose is. And
That guy has got some paperwork to do at the
Oh,
end
yeah.
of his day.
Like I said, it can be fun and it can be terrifying all in the same flight because it's fun up until that happens, and now you've got to deal with it.
On the refueling, on that first objective,
Yeah.
a missile went underneath the refueling bird, and it was like, we're leaving,
Yeah.
and just bailed.
Yeah.
And again, I was just sitting in the back, like, I don't know what's going on.
And you know, that's the thing. You asked me the difference between the 90s and after 2001, and we always had redundancy planned in. So air refueling always had a redundant fuel plan, you know, ground fuel somewhere else, or a shortened route or something. Once Afghanistan happened, you know, the very first time we had Talons instead of Papa models. So the C-130 Papa is a dedicated refueler. The Talon, the combat Talon, you know, is for also, you know, delivery of air packages, right? And that's what they consider themselves. We're Talon pilots. We're not tanker pilots. And so one day they prioritized a drop over my fuel, and I had to land in Afghanistan. It was a flight of 2, and wait for another Chinook to fly fuel to me because I ran out of gas.
You had to wait for one of your buddies to go hit the gas station and bring you basically, I assume it was a red jerry can.
Pretty
And
yeah,
just-
big black one. It's like 500 gallons. But yeah, I remember being so pissed. It's like, come on, guys, you know, and they were just so used to us being able to absorb not getting our gas, you know, and that changed because now we were going, okay, look, we're going to get to the tanker with 20 minutes of fuel.
That is a thin margin, man.
Yeah. But when you start talking about Afghanistan in particular, in order to carry the amount of assaulters that the ground force feels they need, something's going to give.
Yeah, weight and balance is a real
It's
thing
usually
for
going to be
sure.
fuel. So that's the questions, you know, that go back and forth I'd have with the troop commander would be, okay, do you want a lot more people, or do you want me to have power to go over the mountains that nobody else is flying over and surprise the enemy, or do you want me to have more gas on the objective so I can do Kazovac or hang? What do you want? You got to tell me. And so there'd be this little, you know, in the early days, it was like, I want everything.
Yeah.
You can't have everything. You can have one of these 3 things.
It's always the way it is. Looking back on your career, I mean, obviously other than Roberts Ridge, does anything else stick out at you where you're like, wow, I am never doing that again? Or that you really got away with one where it shouldn't have gone your way, but it did?
Yeah, there's a lot of those. I mean, I have to pick one.
You don't have to pick one.
No.
I could listen to this stuff.
Well, here's the cool one.
My wife will be like, why are you watching helicopters crash? And I'm like, because I'm trying to learn.
So this book, Razor 03, came out almost 3 years ago now, right? And I wrote a second book called Chinooks in the Dark. Same publisher. It's waiting to hit print. It took a year to get through the Pentagon security review, and then now it's been with
Surprised
them.
it actually made it through in that.
You know, it's funny is that Mark Bissonette, you know, is bitching that his book is
Matt.
taking. Oh, Matt.
Yeah, Matt Bissonette,
Okay.
yep.
Yeah, he's like, oh yeah, they're trying to get me. You know, they've taken this time. It's like, dude, you're not even a third of the way through what I had to do.
Yeah.
You know,
What substantial changes did they come back with in your manuscript?
none.
And see, that's what's wild. At this point, I mean, I guess people could write the tell-all if they wanted to, but here's the thing. If they do that, they're not going to put it through for that submission.
And that was why I thought Chinooks in the Dark would get through so much quicker.
I think it's a manpower issue on the receiving
It
end
is.
of the manuscript. Yeah.
It is. SOCOM, they only had one guy, and he wasn't doing his job. He's a reservist. And then a new guy came in who had a reputation of getting shit done, and he did, man. And boom, he got in like 2 months
One
later.
guy, great,
one guy.
really well staffed up.
Yeah.
We're just really plussed up here.
Yeah. But anyway, the first chapter in that book, I was in Iraq, and there was a dust one, right? 301st soldiers were taken. Dust one stands for duty status undetermined.
Whereabouts unknown.
Whereabouts unknown.
Yeah.
And so they think there's a source that knows where these guys are. He's up in Mosul, and we're down in Balad, and the CAG guys are down in the green zone at the MSS. So I got to go up and pick up this source. Now the source is like 600 pounds. This guy, that's what they wouldn't let me put in the book. There was a nickname for him, and I'm going to say it.
Was
right
it
here.
thin, skinny, perhaps?
I was like,
it has to be.
It was Jabba.
Yeah.
But
Actually, as you just said, 600 pounds, I'm not going to lie, my first thought was of Jabba the Hutt.
well, that's what he looked like.
Yeah.
And you could Google him; he'll pop right. But so he gets on the aircraft, and it felt like a Humvee was driving on board. He's like, you could feel it. And then I got to haul ass down to Camp Cropper, and they're going to debrief him. And so that night, they're convinced that in a place called Yusufia, it's down just I think it's west of Baghdad. And it's a very nasty place, and some of them are bad guys. And so we go in there with 5 Blackhawks, 2 Chinooks, 2 MH6s, and 2 AH6s.
It's a heavy package.
That's the package, right? Because we think we're going to get American soldiers. And as we come in, it was interesting. It's beautiful weather. We got a big stack overhead, all the firepower you could want. And I remember the little birds doing their bump. And the funny thing is I've never seen them do the bump.
Oh, really?
I've only seen the rockets hit.
Oh, you're talking about for the AHs as they do their little pop-up? Yeah.
So they're always on my, behind me.
Yeah.
So when they go up and come down and they start shooting, all I see is the miniguns and the rockets. I don't ever get to see the aircraft.
Yeah.
And so one day we did this, I'm not getting into that. But anyway, so we do this, we put everybody in, we go back to the MSS, now it's just time to wait. The actions on are happening. And while that happens, a thunderstorm rolls through. And it's a biggie, right? And it drives all of the upper package, ISR, fires, everything, gone. Everything
Really?
left. So now the ground force is on the ground.
So people listening to this from the ground force perspective, everything you're describing is stuff that they love, right? Because the stack overhead is literally aircraft stacked. It'll be at 1,000 to 2,000 foot intervals. You could have A-10s, F-18s, F-15s, F-16s. You could have
The AC-130.
like everything, and they're kind of coordinating and doing their own thing, right? The AC-130 is lower in their orbit, but then they can coordinate like who's looking at what, and you're just on the radio, and you can just, I want that destroyed, not a problem. And so then though, imagine being in a contentious environment, and then all of that leaves.
Yeah.
And now it's just boots on the ground versus boots on
And
the
the sun's going
ground.
to come up soon.
Oh, of course. Why not?
Right. So, the weather, so the rain has stopped, but, anybody who understands meteorology, the wind is now, 5 to 6 knots. The dew point spreads like 4, and there's a
to
lot
get a
of dust in
little
the air.
ground fog, yep.
So there's fog, right? There's a lot of water around the Euphrates River and all that stuff. So it's solid fog. And the L&O comes to me. We're sitting there. And he's like, Al, ground force commander wants to talk to you, right? So this is, the actual green commander. And he's like, Al, they tell me you can get my guys out. I'm like, what do you mean? We can't get them out? He goes, have you looked out the window? I was like, no, right? So I walked to the door, and you can't see across the road to the helipad.
So this is like low-hanging ground fog, just the yeah. That
That's
stuff
just-
actually happens up here quite a bit too, shockingly enough. Well, the temperature dew point spread just smashes together, even in freezing temps.
Yeah, you can fog up an aircraft or an airfield with an aircraft.
Yeah.
Right? You just get that mixing action.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I look at it and I'm like, shit, what are the other guys doing? And the Black Hawk guys have all the same equipment as me.
Yeah.
The radar and all this other stuff, but they don't practice it the way the Chinook guys do, because the Chinook guys have been doing this since early 2001. And this has got to be 2005 or 6 now. So I said, okay, give me a half hour. I'll go get them, right, with 2 Chinooks. So, I told you the package, 5 Blackhawks, 2 Chinooks. There's a lot of guys. So I pick what I think is a good LZ, and then I call up to Balad, to the imagery guy, and we're now talking back and forth. And he's like, all right, man, move it here. He's mensurating, the target imagery. He said, there's a telephone pole here. You don't want to go there. And so he picks 2 spots, on the same big, lot, and we're going to go take off 2 minutes apart, fly up to like 2,000 feet, couple up the aircraft, and let it drive down to a 40-foot hover, and then we're going to land.
You basically were going to do an instrument approach into a combat landing.
That's never been terped, right? So like any instrument approach you've ever done to an airfield, there's math that's been done. They flight checked it.
It's almost as if it's certified and checked,
Almost.
and rubber stamped.
Right? There's a guy from the FAA. His job is flight check, right? So we go in, as we're walking to the aircraft. I remember I couldn't even see the helicopters. It was still dark, and they emphasized the fact they really needed them to come out before the sun came up. So we go out there, and my Chalk 2, and I got to tell you this, I think it was after I did your podcast, actually, the guy who was the co-pilot, not the co-pilot, but he was the pilot in command of that aircraft, said, "Al, I noticed you say I did this, I did that a lot." He goes, "As I recall, I was either in the cockpit or behind you doing the same thing." So I gotta put that out there. Is that
fair enough? You weren't a solo flight of one.
No, and and the guys that flew with me, they're riding right along. But so we go out there, we get cranked up, and now we're going to do what's called an ITO, an instrument takeoff, from a walled compound, and you can't see. So pick up
Can you
straight.
even see the edge of your rotor arc?
Only because the rotor
static electricity.
Yes, you get the halo, they call it, and it's just static.
Which, by the way, under nods, watching you guys come in or just spin on the ground, it was one of my favorite things to do. And I don't know why it happens other than the static electricity. I don't understand the mechanism behind it.
It's the nickel erosion caps.
Yeah, it's like I know it happens, and I can kind of talk about why, but it's so cool under nods too.
Well, that's all we could see, and so we took off, and we've been flying multiple nights. Everybody knows where all the telephone poles are and all that stuff. So we come up to about 75 feet, and then start a forward flight.
Are you just head down looking at an instrument? Or does the machine have the ability to do this autonomously?
No, it does now.
Okay.
Back then it didn't. So
you're just straight.
It's a video game.
Okay.
There's a circle and a line and a crosshair, and you just got to keep them all lined up.
Yeah.
So we do that, and then once you get up to about 60, 70 knots, you can couple, right? So now the aircraft will drive on its own, right? This is all pilot induced. And so now the aircraft is climbing on its own, on a heading, and then you couple up to the flight plan.
Yep.
And then it turns while it's climbing, and it goes up to I think we went to 2,000 feet.
Out of the clouds at that point?
No,
the fog?
No,
really?
We're still in the clouds. So this whole time we're in the clouds. And, the aircraft turns, and you hit what's called top of descent, and it starts to come down, right? And now everything's fine, except the radar altimeter kicks on at 1,500 feet, AGL, above ground.
Yeah.
And so once that happens, it's like any instrument approach you've ever done to an airfield, when you're really, shooting to decision height.
Yeah.
It kind of sucks once the radar altimeter kicks on now, and it's like, okay, we're actually getting near the ground. This is
especially
real.
when you're getting near your, potential go around criteria, and you're getting the 400 feet, and your decision altitude is 200, and you still don't have ground contact.
Right, and we're going to 40 feet. So now I've got to hope that the imagery guy was good.
Yeah,
and he was. What was his name? Craig Coateson.
It literally would take the
Absolutely
substitution of one digit, and then probably the 10 digit that he gave you guys, and you guys would die.
Yeah, and the other thing we did have is the uniform element went out and walked the grounds. So
that's still assuming that your hardware is going to fly you to that designated point.
but we'd done this. We'd done this in Afghanistan a number of times. I just never done it. I had never done it to a field that I hadn't already been to.
Yeah,
I've done it to FOBs. I've done it to runways. Never done this. So this, let me tell you, my seat cushions up around here.
Watertight.
Yeah. What do they say is a frog's ass, waterproof, watertight.
Oh yes.
But so we come in.
Hot
and
Etchel's effect. Damn, I didn't even know there was a. Okay.
And I've got Chalk 2 minutes behind me. So he's doing the same thing, but he's
slightly offset.
He's going to land about 200 meters away. That's it. And so we come down. We're at 40 feet, and now you take over. The pilot does, and you just come straight down and land. And that's dust now too. So as the dust settles, I can see it. Looked like Pirates of the Caribbean, the very first movie where the pirates are coming out of the mist in the underwater or whatever. It looked like that as the ground force came at us. And now I took, God, I don't know, it must have been 60, 70 people on board each aircraft. And then we I got the whole assault force.
So you had to have been super light on gas then too to be able to pull out.
Well, in Afghanistan, I can carry payload wise, I can take more than you can put inside.
In Iraq, you mean, or Afghanistan?
In Iraq. Iraq. So, I'd say you can have, 20 on the infill and 60 on the exfil. Okay. For contingencies.
That is
but so
very packed
we took
cabin.
back off, did the same thing, went back to the MSS. Now the fog was starting to dissipate. And as we flew over the top of the MSS, what I told the commander was, I'm not doing an approach into there. It's too many things.
Yeah.
I said, but I'll come over the top, and if I can see down, I'll come and land. If not, I'm taking the guys to Balad, and we're going to do a real instrument approach to the runway.
Yeah.
But I came over the top, looked down, and I could see the MSS. And so I just spiraled on down. I, as in we.
Yeah.
Spiraled on down, set them down, and got everybody. And so the next day I come out there, and the commander's like, good job, Al. You and you guys did a great job. As a reward, you can have ice cream.
Thanks.
Because that's the big thing with the Tier 1 forces is they sometimes get Baskin-Robbins ice cream.
Sometimes.
Yeah. What they didn't know is we've been pilfering it
Why would you not?
for weeks anyway.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, oh, yeah.
Maybe we knew and were facilitating that so you would pick us up on foggy days.
It could be. But, it's funny because nobody had ever done that before.
Yeah, because it sounds wildly dangerous.
Well, there's a lot of risk to it, and there's not a lot of leeway to screw up.
Were you the final authority on the go, no go for that? Or did you have to push it? If something would have happened on that,
It would have been my fault.
would have been so like your CO above you wouldn't have bitten the bullet for that one? Or did you,
No, they would have, because they asked, Al, can you do it? Yes. Right. So a flight lead in the 160th.
It's a lot of trust.
A flight lead in the 160th has a lot of trust. So if I say I can do something, chances are the commander's going to let me do it. Or he may have some criteria that, makes him happier. Like, all right, but can you take 5 guys less, so you're a little bit lighter? And, sure, whatever. But for the most part, like in Afghanistan, I was allowed out of Sharana to do vehicle interdiction with Chinooks. Mm-hmm. Now, there was a what they call the Day VI package, which was Little Birds and Blackhawks. You don't do VI with Chinooks, right? And everybody, the 160th opinion, right? But the Blackhawks couldn't fly at Sharana. It's too high.
Yeah.
So in the summer, they couldn't even come to a hover with no ground force, let alone.
Wow.
So I would do these VIs. And the other flight leads were, I don't know if jealous is the right word, they were mad that they weren't allowed to do it. But it just happened to be that, I was in the one place where you could only do it in Chinooks.
Yeah.
Where they were, you could do it with the package.
There was an interesting time when they shifted from doing daytime VI, which is vehicle interdiction, from the night. Because again, traditionally, the Night Stalkers, shockingly enough, prefer to fly at nighttime, as they should, because the odds are stacked in your favor. But, never underestimate your enemy. It's like, wow, we've been looking for this guy, and he's not very active at night. But in the daylight hours, he seems to be out there. And, I mean, there's certainly more risk, but also you can probably catch these guys.
Well, look at Iraq.
Yeah.
Or not Iran, with the the decapitation strike. The guys were brazen enough to meet together in the daylight. Oh, they won't come out in the day.
Yeah. I mean, dropping bombs in the day is a little bit of a different story. I mean, where you're talking literally, I won't get into the details of the VI, but let's just say that the helicopters and assets are in pretty close proximity to what's going on, which is protected a little bit more in the cover of darkness. So yeah, it was a ballsy move for sure. But, for a high value enough target.
Well, that's the thing. The last hurdle I had to get with Chinooks in the dark with the DOD was they sent it back to me approved with some minor changes. Mm-hmm. It was all stuff that was inconsequential. It's like even in Razor 03, the stuff they made me take out is they wouldn't let me put CAG in there or DevGru. It had to be SEALs and SF.
Both of those names are that is the actual the name that the
That's the
commands
unclassified name,
themselves.
right? Yeah.
That is so stupid.
But anyway, so I didn't put in Chinooks in the dark. I didn't put that.
Yeah.
And so but they send me back this thing. It's approved. I send it to the publisher, and then the guy from the Pentagon calls me. He's like, Al, you didn't send that to your publisher yet, did you? I was like, yeah, why? He goes, well, one of the commands just came back. They've got some concerns. I was like, okay. Turns out it was PACOM or SOCPAC, the Pacific area, the Philippines, the chapter I did on the OEFP. And they were doing boat interdiction, like VI.
Yeah, just VI on the water.
Right. But it was very sensitive because the Americans weren't really supposed to be doing offensive operations. In this case, they weren't. But if they were shot at by the boat, they could defend themselves, right? And then they were going after a guy named Abu Sabata, who was the head of the Abu Sayyaf group, had the Burnhams hostage. And so the Philippine SEALs were on a boat with one set of goggles from the Night Stalkers, and they ran right over the bad guys.
Intentionally or unintentionally?
No, unintentionally. Because all they had is the one guy. It was like the liaison was on the bow, and
So hold on, they ran him over in a boat?
yeah.
I love every part of this story.
And these idiots, I don't know if they're idiots or not. They're probably going to die anyway. But so they're in the water, the bad guys, and they're shooting at the
While floating in the water?
yeah.
Get some.
So that's exactly what happened.
Get some.
So I thought that's what the concern was going to be, and it was nothing but. I had mentioned what the mission set was for the Night Stalkers.
Yeah.
And they wanted one acronym removed. That was it. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't change anything.
Yeah, I would take
But
it.
the stuff I thought was going to be a problem wasn't, and the stuff that I was like, that's not a big deal.
How many hours did you exit service with flying? How many hours did you, when you got out of the military, how many hours did you have?
I think officially on my flight rate, I had 6,700.
What's the biggest lesson you learned in that 6,700? Advice to young rotary pilots like myself or any aviators out there. I'm about half of that with my fixed wing in there, but just a couple hundred of rotary.
Yeah, I mean, the big thing is two things. Number one, always leave yourself an out when you can, and never quit flying the aircraft. Just like you said about, skydiving. You got to do everything you can. And
If it's going to kill you anyway, you might as well fight the thing until the very end.
yeah, so I was talking to the mother of the pilots that died in Wild 4-2, which was the aircraft in the Philippines. They nosed in doing about 150 knots. And
To the water?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not survivable.
They were Chalk 2 and long night. It's detailed in the book, but they essentially got spatial disorientation and drove it right into the water. And I've heard the voice data recorder, the cockpit conversations. And at the end, they tried, it was the crew chief saying, climb, climb, climb. And they tried. And the pilot, one of the pilot's mother is asking me, she goes, did he suffer? And I was like, no. I said, he thought he was going to be successful until he ceased to exist. He just wasn't there anymore. But he was trying,
Yeah,
and
he was working the problem until he could.
And that's the thing is you don't know until you pull it away and you're like, holy crap,
Yeah.
I made it. Other than that, you'll never know.
Yeah, I'm even when I was flying fixed wing, very current, and flying professionally, Part 135 and then Part 91. I always I'm voraciously read accident reports, and it's amazing at how often it is not the piece of equipment.
Do you have up here, like in Colorado, we used to fly out of a place called Gunnison. It's kind of up in the mountains.
I know where it is, yeah.
Okay. And every box canyon, and every doesn't mean literally everyone, but probably 8 or 9 of them had airplanes at the end of a box canyon.
Really?
That did not make it out for whatever reason. So the advice I would give you flying around here in the mountains, 2 things. Number one, when it comes to power, never do an OGE maneuver right at your power. Always give yourself 10% at least.
Yeah.
Of
OGE
power
stands
margin.
for out of ground effect for people listening, which
And
they're
then-
not going to understand, but that's what it means.
And then the other thing is always fly one side or the other on in a valley.
Yeah, so you can turn either left or right.
Right. And that's the one thing, I talked earlier about the guys who are always like, Al's going to make us do this the hard way. When you come down from a 12,000 foot mountain to a 3,000 foot landing zone in like a 3 or 4 mile stretch, you're coming down fast, right? And the only way to do that is to hug the guy on the controls to hug that side of the valley. So you're seeing the terrain rush past you. But if you go right up the center, which is what most guys try to do, everybody's just disoriented, because you don't have any real rush of the terrain. You
Till
just,
the very end.
yeah. And it's like, then you get to the bottom. It's like, shit.
Yeah, it's interesting. Not all pilots are created equal, and not all instructors are created equal. And I have noticed a difference between instructors that have the vast majority of their time only instructing in a very linear airport environment versus instructors that learned in that environment and now have tens of thousands of hours in an operational world. And they basically will say this is me speaking, but they'll say, hey, You know that stuff you learned in those 90-degree turns that you do when everything is linear? Wipe your ass with that shit. Let's go in the mountains, and I will show you how you actually stay alive and how some of that stuff will actually kill you, which is wild. There's a huge gap between those two knowledge bases, between the operational pilot and the instructor pilot, and by no stretch throwing any shade at that instructor pilot, because they're doing
know.
Exactly. They don't know, and they're not trying to be dangerous, and they aren't being dangerous. What they are teaching people to do is to pass their private pilot's license test, which is a license to go fucking kill yourself if you're not careful.
You know, it's like one of the things I learned in avoiding threats. It turned out to be great for environmental conditions. So, for example, flying in the mountains, if I've got to go from that 3,000 foot, valley floor to 12,000 foot right here, I'm not going to start this gradual climb, because now I'm blue sky, if you will, for a man pad, right?
Yeah.
So he's going to lock onto me with no trouble. So instead, you stay low until you can't, and then you kind of zigzag, almost like a switchback.
Yeah, like you're hiking up a mountain.
Yeah,
Interesting.
and you fly, so you can still be at 50 feet above the terrain, but you're coming up. And then if you run out of power or somebody shoots at you, all you do is just dive down and away. And you've got the valley out there.
And my instructor's been awesome about this as well too. Depending on where the wind is at, you might get some nice orographic lift, and the next thing you know, you're doing like 1,500 feet per minute up. It's 60% torque. You're like, this is awesome.
Yeah, and that's the stuff we didn't even. I hadn't even thought about that in years. But when you do a pinnacle approach, you're looking to come into the wind. You've got this line of demarcation, or if you come in under it, you're probably going to get a downdraft just as you're at the wrong time.
Yeah, you don't want to confuse those two. If you're expecting an updraft and you have a power setting for that, and you start getting the hand of God put on the top of your,
There's along the lines of what do you call it, like a microburst on a fixed wing.
Yeah. Right. So there's a grass runway just outside the airspace and probably the physical boundary of Glacier National Park, and there were 2 fatal accidents there last year, both in the summer, both on very hot days. So they were hot and high, meaning hot temperature, high, and I'm talking density altitude, which is not necessarily what the altimeter is showing you. This is what your engine thinks, both of which unfortunately included passengers, both of them long into the trees, which, I
think you see that a lot in Leadville in Colorado.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Highest airport in the country.
I've jumped into Leadville, and when I flared my canopy, I heard it laugh at me as I smashed into the ground. But again, I try to read up on that stuff as much as possible, and I'm not shared a Monday morning quarterback, but hot and high days up here will kill you for sure. Like if I am going to go out and fly, I'll go fly in the morning, or I'll go fly in the evening when things have cooled down a little bit, just to give me that more power. Same thing you said, like hugging. Always the classic flight school approach is that you approach everything from a 90 degrees straight out. It's like, no, take an incredibly oblique angle so it's just a nice peel off to the side. You don't learn that stuff, though, until after you have your license.
Yeah. And hopefully not, I used to say that, when I was a W-1 or a young W-2 in a conventional unit, and they send me out with another guy my equal or less, and I said there's a saying that bad decisions equal experience equals good judgment. Yeah. And I said I was getting a lot of good judgment because I was getting a lot of experience doing stupid things that I shouldn't do because I was junior. Yeah. And the other guy was no better to say, Al, that's not a good idea. It's like, all right, let's try it. And if you survive these things, then know.
Or I've heard it in terms of buckets. You have luck bucket and experience bucket, and it takes a little bit of time to move. Yeah, I just hope that you're around at that. The second book, what did you change between Razor 03 and then Chinooks in the Night?
Chinooks in the Dark. So Razor 03 was mostly stories in Afghanistan that had already hit the news. So I figured that was the easiest way to get through because there was already some open source stuff.
Talking about you're inserting the horse soldiers and all that stuff earlier. And then getting people, what was it, Michael, 253?
250, let me double check, but I believe
I'm pretty sure it was 253. So we went into that pretty deeply the first time. So people are interested in the early, and by that I mean early Afghanistan. Yeah.
And then I had some family challenges. My wife at the time had an opioid addiction, prescription meds. She ended up dying.
I'm sorry, man.
Yeah. But, this... Geez, how many years was that now? But that's why I went to West Point to fly there and found my new wife, Patty, who's great. But so Chinooks in the Dark doesn't have that family drama, and it's mostly Iraq. Although there's the Philippines I talked to those guys, put that in there. I talked to General Jay Daly, who we nicknamed Coach. He's one of the original commanders of the 160th, and I interviewed him on a thing called Mount Hope 3. So Mount Hope 3 was they took a Chinook and they flew into Libya and they stole a hind that was disabled.
So far, I love every part of the story. When did this happen?
This was in the 80s.
Did they obviously fly a mechanic in there too to like help put it back together and get it serviceable?
No, they flew it. They flew it to Chad, I think it was. And
So they just got in there, kicked the tires, and
they slung it. They slung it
damn it.
beneath the Chinook.
No, in this story,
No, they
pilot
tried that.
gets out.
They did that in Mount Hope 1.
Okay, good.
They tried that.
Yes, that's
but
what I'm talking
they couldn't
about.
get it going. There's bullets in the engine, so they couldn't
That
get it
does
started.
make it problematic.
And then Mount Hope 2, I'm not sure what it was something along those lines. And Mount Hope 3 is the very first use of a Chinook being moved by C5. They had to devise this whole
interesting.
process. And so this is like early 1980s, maybe 80, 82. It's when remember the Iranians were mining the
In
Persian
1982,
Gulf,
I
I
would have
think.
been 5, so I do not remember.
Oh, well, anyway, the 160th was shooting up all these mine laying boats.
Okay.
Prime Chance was the name of the thing. During that time frame is when this happened. So General Daly, who was a colonel at the time, the regimental commander, actually it wasn't a regiment, it was the SOAG, Special Operations Aviation Group. And he's fighting with the Air Force, and the State Department doesn't want him to do it, but I can't remember who, it's in the book, but, so they figure out how to put two Chinooks into C5. They fly out, they put it back together, they fly in, they sling this thing out, and they put it on another C5, and they took it back to Fort Rucker, and it flew for the test activity for years. Now, this is back when you couldn't buy a hind. Now
Yeah.
you can probably buy them.
I think I flew in the back of a Russian MiG
Yeah.
down in Bozeman. So I think, depending on the pocketbook. But the era you're talking about, they didn't want us to have one of those.
Yeah. But it was interesting to listen to him talk about what it was like, the regiment. And as he told me about the things that they did and they developed and the techniques and the equipment, I thought, wow, I was in the unit longer than it existed when I got there.
Oh, wow.
Right. So I got there, the unit was like 15 years old and I was there 17 years.
Yeah.
So when I got there, I just thought this is the way it's always been. No, the Chinooks only got, really involved, there. And that was the fastest deployable aviation task force in the world. That was kind of the proof that you could do that with everything to include the Chinooks.
How long did it take them to sling that thing?
It didn't take long.
I was going to say, I feel like they were doing NASCAR pit drills somewhere.
They knew, what they did? They flew in with a C-130
Yeah.
with a rigging team.
Yep.
They rigged it up, and they had been practicing all this out of Bragg. There's a place called ATF, and they had a Navy SH-3 is the closest thing they could find, and they put a bunch of weight in it.
Okay, yeah, yep.
And the idea was the airframe was the right shape to see what it would fly like.
Yeah.
And so they did a proof of concept. They went out to Holloman Air Force Base and flew 5 500-gallon blivets beneath the Chinook, which is 18,000 pounds or so.
Yeah.
And they still, no matter what they did, that aircraft was trashed when it was done because they were way over gross. But
The one doing the lifting.
but that's the kind of that's the kind of stuff that's in the book. And then I talk about
Awesome.
every step of the way from assessment to flight lead using real vignettes of either stuff that happened to me or other people that I talked to. So, I talked to, let's see, they did a hostage rescue in Afghanistan on top of a mountain where they came in. You've seen the video of the guys walking up and the bad guys don't have any sentries and they're asleep with their blankets.
Probably, yeah.
And you see the helmet cam of the guy, come up. You see the muzzle of an M4, and the guy pulls the blanket down and then pulls it back up, and they. But
I don't know
anyway,
if that's the move. Do you watch it happen, or do you go back into your blanket? It's tough to say.
I don't know. But anyway, there's that, and some other stories in Iraq. Like the one I told you about the getting everybody out, and then, one of the coolest ones I did is a thing called Kiowa, which was a guy that came out of Iran into Iraq, and it was crappy weather, so he figured he was safe. But no, we flew the ground force out, got him, and it's a pretty cool story, actually.
When you guys, what is the selection and assessment like? Do you guys put a message out and say, hey, if you want to fly here, here's the minimum criteria.
They have a recruiting team that goes around to all of the installations that have pilots and crew members.
Army only, or will you guys go service-wide or military-wide?
The recruiting effort only goes to the Army, but
it's very sexist.
The last 5 years or so that I was there, we had 11 Marine Corps aviators, lieutenant colonels, every one of them, all came across to be Army warrant officers and fly for the 160th. They did an inter-service transfer.
Is there a pay hit associated with that? I was going to say.
There is. But what they did is they give them a bonus to offset it.
Yeah. When I went from E6 to O1, there was a pay hit, but that's why it's O1E. There's a little bit of a stop loss.
Yeah.
I feel like Lieutenant Colonel to
and then
CW1 is going to sting.
And then you can just put in for it. You don't have to go to. But the recruiting brief, they show you a little hoorah video, and they.
So then, do they fly you out to the unit?
Yep.
And what if you're not? Do you have to be flying one of the assets that they fly?
No.
So then, how do you test them on something? Like, so say they've never flown either an MH Blackhawk or a Chinook. Let's say they're a 53 pilot. Mm-hmm. How do you assess them then? You get in there in the cockpit with them, and you mean obviously somebody in that aircraft is fully certified and qualified. Yeah. And you're looking at their stick and rudder. Is this an interview thing?
It's everything. So it's only a week long assessment, but you fill out this packet. It's like this thick of that book, and I can't remember the numbers. I did put it in the book, the numbers of the people they actually assessed. They reject from the packet. They bring you in, and then you do, a standard Army PT test, a swim test, just a Navy.
Yeah, all the basic military stuff. Yeah.
And then, couple of psychology tests. And then, depending which aircraft you're assessing for. So if you're already a Chinook pilot, you're assessing for Chinooks. If you are another airframe that we don't have, like, an Apache guy or a 53 guy, they'll figure out where they're going to put you. And then those guys will assess you. And so, for example, I found that Apache and Kiowa Warrior guys, which was the OH-58, were the best Chinook transplants.
Really?
And the reason was Chinook pilots that came already had kind of a cushy life, so they generally don't come to the 160th because it's an assault platform. It's not really a cargo. It's heavy assault.
Yeah.
So it's more like a Blackhawk mission. So if you get Blackhawk guys, the Blackhawk guys have what's called interference, in their mind, and they kind of they're like.
I feel like this is a ding on the Blackhawk guys, but
no. Well, it should be, but it's not. Just that they would be like, this isn't how you do an assault in a Blackhawk. This is a Chinook. You have these other things.
Yeah.
So they're a little bit tougher to get through that initial, okay, this is how we do it. But the Apache and the KW guys haven't got a clue. They're attack guys, right? And they just come in and you tell them what to do and they just do it. Oh, okay. Or Cobra guys. They were a lot of fun.
Interesting.
But, if you're an attack guy, generally you want to come in and you want to be an AH-6 pilot, right? But there's only so many of them. Mm-hmm. And if you're good enough, like they want you, but they just can't take you in that unit, they'll say, would you accept a Chinook transition? And almost always they say yes.
That is the correct answer.
Yeah. And then they'll bring you in.
So how can they assess? So say you bring in an Apache guy and whatever, he's going to get into a Chinook. What are you asking him to do in that bird, given that they've never flown it before, to really give you an idea of the level of aviator?
So they don't, if they're not qualified in the Chinook, for example, they don't fly in the Chinook.
Okay.
Right. What they do is they'll come to the simulator. The flight simulator is very realistic. And I will sit there and say, okay, look at this stuff. Here's what the aircraft will do, right? And it's twofold. Number one, it's a little ooh and ah, recruiting pitch spiel. Look what you can fly. But I want to see his retention. Can he figure out, because, 20 minutes into this, I'm going to say, okay, bring up the hover page. And if he remembers the right button to push, and then I tell him how to use it, and if he can do it, then, okay, in my opinion, he's trainable.
So it's actually less stick and rudder and more your ability to learn.
Yes.
Are there people who are just not good enough pilots and they're just wadding the simulator up left and right?
Yeah. I mean, there's guys, no, there are. And, there are guys that have gotten through where they were good enough pilots, but their personalities sucked, and you can tell, when the board happens at the end, right? You sit in front of this board of officers, your instructor pilot, the recruiter, the colonel, and they sit there and they critique your performance, and you have to give a briefing and some other things. But they critique your performance, and if we already know that we're not going to take you, it's generally a very gentle, 20 minutes and you're out of there, right? Let you down easy. Maybe we'll even ask you to come back. You weren't ready.
Yeah, especially, there's no reason to drag that up more.
No.
The news is already bad enough.
But if you're an asshole, and there are a few,
60 minutes minimum.
you're gonna run the whole gamut. I've seen captains, Army 03s, get veins popping out of their head, sweat, and just spittle flying as they walk out of there. Fuck you guys, I'm out of here. And as they leave, the colonel's like, yeah, I knew he wasn't going to fit in.
And your name will be put on whatever roster it is to make sure that you never return.
Well, what sucks though is those are the guys that go back to their unit, and talk bad about us. Like, oh, those guys, a bunch of cowboys, they wouldn't take me, and it's like,
they missed out.
Yeah, they missed out, right? It's like, no, we dodged a bullet. But, then there's other guys who we're not going to take them. Well, you might take them, and they're kind of on the fence, right? And you're like, okay, let's put the screws to him and see how he handles it. How does he handle the stress of this? Because it's no fun. And, I remember when I was on the other end of it, thinking, God, this sucks, but I was expecting them to ask me questions about my wife at the time that I wasn't ready to answer, or I thought would stop me from getting in, and they never did. So every hard question they asked me was not hard because it wasn't the one I feared.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then afterwards, the shrink took me aside and said, hey, we purposely didn't talk about that. We'll deal with it,
Yeah.
kind of thing.
What? How long does it, in the civilian world, they would call it getting type rated? How long is if somebody comes in there, they're going to be a Chinook guy, they're coming from an Apache?
Takes about 8 months.
8 months?
Yeah.
Jesus, I was going to say 2 weeks.
No, but that improves. But that includes the environments.
Okay.
Right. So you're going to do mission training. So you do terrain following radar. You'll
Yeah.
do air refueling, shipboard landings, mountain oxygen, urban. Right.
Okay.
So you do all that stuff in the course of 8 months. So
Okay. Well, that's way more. Like in the civilian world, you would go learn the aircraft itself, the minimum to be able to kill yourself by getting it off the ground, and then you'd get a rubber stamp.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's what a friend of mine, when I went to the Lakota transition, Indiantown Gap, a friend of mine was flying EC-145s for air methods.
Yeah.
And he goes, I did a ride along with him. He goes, yeah, see this? 3 days. I got 3 days of training and they sent me off on my own. He goes, you're going to go to Indiantown Gap and take 8 weeks to learn what I learned in 3 days.
I don't know if learned in 3 days is the appropriate word
No.
to say there. Yeah,
Right.
You'll learn in 8 weeks what he tried to learn in 3 days.
Yeah.
Those two products are not the same, but that is about what it is in the,
Yeah.
you're going to do, what's the maximum gross weight?
Yeah.
What's the maximum allowable,
Right. Well, it's like, I want to say it's probably 2 months of that 8 is spent just learning to fly it.
yeah, airframe specific type
So you're
stuff.
doing,
Yeah.
engine failures, roll-on landings, emergencies, AFCS off flight.
Yep.
And then once you're good at that, then we do instruments.
Yep.
And then you transition into mission stuff. And each of those mission environments, you do in the simulator first.
I was going to say, how much of this time is in the sim versus the real aircraft?
Not very much, but you always proceed the next phase of training in the simulator.
That makes total sense.
So air refueling, you get up there, and the thing is, it's not that realistic, but
Yeah.
you can do the maneuver, right? Because the tanker comes at you 300 foot above you, half-mile offset. He's doing 180, and as you come by, and you're doing 120, and then he loses all his speed as he comes around you and stops at your 2 o'clock. You climb up, get into position, plug, and do your thing. So you can do that in the simulator, and then run the checklists and all that kind of stuff. But the actual movement to contact, the simulators, the fidelity is not that good. But dust landings, it's good for that. You can go land into walled compounds or canyons and stuff like that and transition to what we call loss of visual reference approach. And so it's good for all that stuff. Deck landings, you land on LHD, LPDs, right there in the simulator. So before you go to do deck landings, you're going to be in the
That's
simulator.
pretty cool.
So it's actually better than, what do they call that? The FCLP? I can't remember the acronym. So typically when you go to a Navy ship, you have to do a refresher. You have to do 6 bounces at an airfield that has markings like a ship.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about, yeah.
I can't remember the acronym. But we didn't have to because the Navy certified our simulator is good enough, to do that.
Yeah. What's the most impressive thing you've ever seen happen in a helicopter?
That's a good question. I think the most impressive thing I've ever seen is what we talked about earlier, the one-wheel landing in Afghanistan on a ridgeline that probably wasn't much wider than this table.
See if you can find this, Michael. It would probably be Army Chinook rear wheel landing on hut on mountainside.
Yeah, that's a famous picture of the guys out of Pennsylvania. Actually, they made a Christmas card.
As far as Christmas card,
hey Haji, it ain't Santa Claus.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a two-wheel landing that he's going to pull up. And try doing it with one because now you're balancing. If you get two, the thing is stable.
Yeah.
And kind of like this, it ain't moving. But
Yeah.
if you're on one,
that, you're all
doing
over
its
the
whole
place.
thing.
Yeah, 3-dimensional rotation. What'd you find there, Michael?
Still.
But the most impressive was to see that happen once on a target that went hot. So
And the guy's just rock
the guys,
solid.
Yeah, we're doing ours with silver, and we come in, and every approach was a fast rope approach, except for this one, which was a two-wheel landing. And he lands. He's doing it. The ground force is getting out, and a machine gun is right there, like a belt-fed machine gun, and the minigun opens up while the guy's doing this.
That's weak.
I don't know if this is the exact video that you're looking for.
That is not the exact video I'm looking for. Does that look like a hut in Afghanistan? You disgust me.
I did his.
Oh, it's on? Okay.
He's a good guy.
What that is in theory, though, kind of what we're talking about, except put a structure on there, and the guy didn't destroy. Well, he probably did when he left and when he applied power, but
But see, so if you look where the pilots are,
Yeah.
right, so they've got an armor panel in that the right door,
okay.
right? So the chin bubble's clear, but the right panel looks like it's probably got an armored panel there. So he's not looking down. So and because you get the pointy nose, the chin bubble's not as big.
Yeah.
So you have you can't look. You got nothing to look at.
Is this just? Oh yeah, there we go. Is
a
this
little
just
better example.
listening to the crew chief too? Like forward 5 right there.
That's it.
Yeah.
You got to listen to the crew chief. The crew chief is everything. Especially, I've done stuff to like these little patrol bases.
Yeah. Like this is
done
similar,
this.
but this is demonstrated. You know, again, are you up there? Is there in the modern ones? Is there a button they can push that would hold that position, or are guys?
There is now.
Wow.
There wasn't.
I was going to say, so you're up there and just
There's stuff they
riding
can,
the bull.
Oh, there's stuff now. I'm jealous. There's stuff they can do now.
I mean, that's ridiculous. Also, did
Well,
he
and that
back? Did he
rotor-
back into that, or did he come straight down?
Probably came straight down. It's the easiest thing to do. Backing up sucks.
Oh yeah.
So like when you do an external load, for example,
Good
you'll
God.
come to a hover about 10 feet above the load.
Yeah.
You're stable, and then you go, okay, moving forward. And you just ease forward, and the crew chief's looking through the hole, and he's like, all right, forward, 20, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And as you hear that final countdown, you just slow down and you stop. But if you stay there too long and you start moving around because there's no visual reference,
Yeah.
and then he's like, back 5. You might as well just go around
Yeah.
and come back because it's so much
Yeah,
easier.
because you're staring out into space, right?
Yeah. There's it.
Yes.
That's the guys. Those are the guys out of the Pennsylvania Guard, actually.
I mean, basically, the front of that is parked in a tree.
Yeah, and that's what you want. That's what you want.
That's a great visual reference, though, right?
It is great. You know,
Yeah.
I did a thing actually on Red Wings. I put Red Squadron in, and they were supposed to fast rope 90 foot, right?
That's
And
not
so-
fun, by the way.
No, and the other aircraft did it from 90 feet, and they all burned their hands and stuff. And as I came to a hover, the other pilot was flying. Actually, he came to a hover, and the crew chief's like, come down 20, 10, 9, and the guy goes, I can't see. I got nothing to look at. And I had a little bush out the side. And I was like, I got a visual. I'll take the controls, right? And then the crew chief goes, sir, just keep coming down. 20. We did a 10-foot rope, right? And
The best is when you kick the rope and it doesn't even go out of frame and you just see the bag. You're like, yeah. That's what I'm. So here's a great example. Pre 9/11 versus post. Pre 9/11, we would go do our static fast rope training in the air lofts, right? And we do 90 footers or whatever we could get. Yeah. And I remember the old guys are like, if I even see your boots on the rope, you will never live it down, you pussy. It's just, I mean, we were in these thick ass welding gloves with flight gloves underneath. Post 9/11, it's like, I got all of, and then we were in flight suits, right? So light. And people were still burning in at the bottom. We'd have like the honeycomb down there as if it's going to do anything. And then post 9/11, it's like all of my shit fully loaded out with a backpack. And they're like, hey, grab the rope with whatever you can. It's just the difference between how awesome we thought we were and then the reality of a 90-footer. Oh my! Even with your feet on the rope, it just sucks.
Right. But now, what I was saying is the aircraft. A good friend of mine, John Woodyard, was the guy that actually developed what's called DAFX, Digital AFCS, Automatic Flight Control System, and it
just sounds like cheating.
Oh, it is. I would love to have had that. And I mean, I got to fly it, when it was still in the test phase.
Yeah.
But I wasn't there when they implemented it. But you could come in to an approach, and I think there was a button on the cyclic you hit, and it was position hold, and then the altitude, and it was all. The only altitude hold we had for the ground was a radar altitude hold. And the problem with that is the slope, right? This thing is all the INS. So it's a gyro, and it knows the aircraft is steady. So you could come 6 inches off the ground
and just hit it.
And it's good. And then you can move it left and right just with your thumb and bring it up and down with your other thumb. And
now, do you think that decreases stick and rudder skills?
It does. It does.
But also, there's a time and place for that too.
But you don't need it, So I mean, when you need it is when that stuff goes away, like battle damage. And there's, for example, we had 3 types of desert landings, or what we call loss of visual reference approach, 2130, it was called. And you had what was called an alpha, Bravo and a Charlie. So an alpha, you come into a stationary hover above the dust cloud, right? So it's all roiled up, and you get stable. You center up everything on the hover page, and you just come down at 300 foot a minute.
And just descend into
until you touch down. And one of my favorite pilots, a guy named Bubbles, used to call it the screaming alpha, because sometimes the ground force would say, I want all 3 aircraft in the same LZ, like one at a time. And so the first aircraft, it sucks. Now the second one, you've got all this talc is up in the air. And by the third guy, you're way up here.
Yeah, I was going to say you're hovering at 600 feet to be out of the dust.
But that's the alpha, right? It's actually the least traumatic of the bunch.
Okay.
The Bravo is a VMC approach, a little bit steeper than normal, where at about 80 feet, you try to match your altitude above the ground with half your airspeed, right? So at 80 feet, you want to be 40 knots.
Yep.
40
60,
feet,
30,
20
all
knots,
that,
right?
40,
Right?
yep.
And if you do it right, when you get to the bottom, it's not too bad. Although you've been there,
Yep.
Sometimes
it's fine when you're in the Hilux, strapped in, right?
Yeah. Well, when you're not, it can be tough. And then what was called the Charlie. Now, the Charlie is essentially an old-fashioned thing, and you could do this in your helicopter right now. So let's say you're going to land to a snowy field.
Yep.
And there's really, when you come in, you start to come into a hover, you start bringing up the whiteout.
Got to come in with some airspeed.
You go, okay, that's not going to work. You're going to come in with airspeed. But here's the deal. You come in well short of where you're going to land, and you essentially air taxi on up, and you keep slowing back until the dust cloud comes up, and it comes to about here.
So before that, though, you have enough ground speed where you are outpacing this. Okay.
So you're slowing back.
Yep.
The cloud will come up, and it will start to come up on you.
So you're catching it in your peripheral.
And you'll see it, and you just look, okay. And all you do is once it gets to here, even if it comes around like this, and you don't like what you see in front of you, you just speed up just a little bit. It's just right? It sounds like that.
Yep.
And then you steer with the pedals to find where you're going to. I like that.
Yeah.
Now what you've done with this cloud is now you're as slow as you can go in those conditions, the wind or whatever it is. It's almost like a single engine or engine out procedure in a EC-145. You go as slow as you can at about 5 feet until it goes bing, and you go, okay, that's it. And you just run it on. And it could be a hover, right? But you don't know. And that's what this does, is it allows you to do that. But nobody ever liked doing it. And they always be like, why would I have to learn that? I was like, okay, you ever had your MFD shot out? I have. And you might want to know how to do this.
I feel like.
And you could do this without the MFDs, just the backup attitude indicator.
Yeah.
So you're just looking. And if it gets to the point where, you're still doing 20, 30 knots on the clouds here, and you might want to rethink what you're doing.
There's some actually really cool grass strips here, the Forest Service grass strips, that you could practice this in the wintertime, relatively consequence-free, where you could... Because for what you're describing, I will go practice this next season, because this season was horrible for snow. I would just go land somewhere else where there's no snow and hike.
If you can,
Guaranteed to not wad up the helicopter.
Yeah. Well, we would do this out at...
I'm flying for slightly different reasons than you were, though. So.
We were playing with this out at Fort Lewis We were landing to this trail. It wasn't snow, it was dust. And it was super talc powder, dust. And we were just coming in and landing like this, because I was showing, their instructor, the right way to do this. Because I was lucky enough to be on the ground floor of inventing these procedures.
Yeah.
It was a guy, Chuck Grant, I'm going to say is his name. It's not his real name. He's the one that came up with it. And then we, as a group, polished it up and wrote it down as a task condition standard. And Afghanistan was the first place we got to really use it. And our company was really good at it because we'd been in Kuwait a couple of years. I mentioned this on that first podcast. And the other company didn't quite embrace it yet. And they lost a couple landing gear and like, you know what, we'll start doing that.
Those dust clouds that you're talking about, I mean, do you have maintenance people up there just washing after every flight and cleaning and compressor washing?
Yeah.
And are they just pulling blades out of basically the N1 blades of the turbine all the time? Because I can't imagine you guys are ingesting stuff that should shut down an engine.
They flush the engines every day. So
how could they not? Yeah.
We fly at night. So we'd come in and it was always interesting. So we'd come back, sun up, we'd do a pre-flight for the next period of darkness. Then we go eat breakfast, or maybe we'd eat breakfast first, wait for the sun to come up. And then we all go to bed. And then at the end of the day, which is our beginning of the day, the maintenance guys have been up, the day walkers have been doing their thing. And, I would be the first one into the planning area. I'd make coffee. I'd turn on all the the big screens and look and see what the ISR is looking at. And then I'd look at the coordinates on all of them and see which ones were in our AOR. It's like, okay, those 3 of 5 are possible for my guys. Right? So I would then plot them, get a general idea of what was involved, and then I'd read the daily, what they call insums, and the misreps. So all of the Sapphire events, all the shooting, people shooting at helicopters and stuff like that. And so I would know what was going on before everybody else came in. And then the maintenance guy would come in, and he'd rip into me about, how we
he had to have something for you every day.
It was every day. And he was one of my favorite pilots. But I'd get my ass handed to me every day for stuff that wasn't my doing. We landed one time on a rock, about this big, and it got stuck between the 2 tires on the front landing gear. It was in a riverbed, and it would not come out. The guys were like trying to kick it out, and we flew all night, into the Khyber Pass, doing
just
stuff.
A little flare piece.
Well, there was, we.
It's not like you guys knew it was there.
They were in contact almost the whole night. We did a couple of Kazovacs, and so the next day he's like, "What the hell? That rock could have dropped on somebody." I'm like, "Could you get it out?" He goes, "Yeah, we got it out with no problem." I said, "How'd you get it out?" "We tried." I'm like, "Well, we had to jack it up, deflate the tires, and pull it out with a chain."
You had to use tools that we didn't have available to us at the time.
And I'm like, "Do you hear yourself?" He's like, "Well, you guys should know better."
Hey man, real world situations dictate.
But they did. The maintenance guys are the unsung heroes. I would go in Iraq. What was cool, and I did detail this in Chinooks in the Dark, is we go down there, and I'd bring like a contact team. So it'd be a gator with a bunch of avionics and engine parts, and I'd bring an avionics guy, an electrician, the engine man, and a tech inspector, a TI, and sometimes be a hydraulics guy, and we'd go down there and they would sit, and these were Echo models, and they were on the end of their time, and they were always breaking, and they'd be like, "Oh, the ground force is going to be here in 15 minutes. Oh, and this sensor just went bad. Bill, got it, sir." It was like a NASCAR pit crew, and it was so great, and I couldn't do that all the time, but there in Iraq I could, and we had enough people, so they had a day and a night schedule.
And what you're describing is just hard shutdown for any other type of aviation.
Yeah,
like. There's no gator with all the extra avionics and just switch out the blade and some of the compressor fans on the number
and these are guys that want to do it. They want to get out of the wire. They want to go down.
No, that's like a hard stop. Maybe disassemble the rotor head as it gets lifted onto a truck and taken to the mechanic somewhere, and you get it back 4 months later in the civilian world.
I had a flat tire one time. I was in Al Assad and worked with gold actually, and I come out there and my left aft tire is flat, and I'm like, the SEALs are going to be here in like 20 minutes. I'm like, "Don't worry, sir, we got it. Go ahead, get inside." Right, so I get inside, I bring everything up online. I feel the aircraft getting jacked up. It sounded just like something out of Formula One.
Yeah,
and they're like, go. You know, it's like,
Yeah, none of that stuff would work without those guys and gals who never get the recognition that they
no,
deserve.
and they don't get a movie
No.
made about them. You know, so it's nice that you have a chance to talk about them right here.
No, it's amazing. I try to as often as possible. But it's, putting stuff out on the internet, you have no control over where it goes and where it lands and what people do with it. But all the time, I will have people who have a conventional military background, and they'll email and say, well, did I do enough? I feel like I did. I'm like, listen, man, I'm sorry that the special operations world writ large gets more attention, because the special operations world, just so you know, can't operate without every other conventional unit in force, by the way.
Right.
Whether it's by, with, and through, whether it's the supply network. Like, who's not getting a movie either? The pilots who flew us from Virginia Beach to fill in the blank in the world, with the helicopters,
And that's one of the
broken
chapters
down.
I did was, so I did a chapter on the flight medics doing CASEVAC. I talked to Jimmy Hatch. I don't know Jimmy.
I know Jimmy well.
Yeah. And so I did an interview with that. And so we had a CASEVAC thing. And then I did one from the maintenance guy's perspective. And the guys that don't get out, like the operations guys, they were great, and they're just flight ops guys that they keep track of your flight time, right? But not overseas. Overseas, they're keeping track of everything. They're keeping the Blue Force trackers up.
Yeah.
They're the guys making sure you have fuel. So they're like, okay, sir, these 5 fobs normally have fuel, but only 2 of them do because there's contamination at these other ones. Don't go there, Or they would keep track of the hospital beds that were available. So if we had to do a CASEVAC, where to take people or not, and then. Who else did I do? The Air Mission Commander, which is a role that doesn't get a lot of. It's tough. They're sitting in the seat in between and behind me and the other pilot, right? So they have no reach on the controls.
Yeah.
Yet they are seeing all of it, and so like when you look up front, sometimes you're like, "Ooh, I'll just close my eyes." And if you don't like what you see, don't look. Well, he's got to watch, and he has no control over it. And so I did a chapter on that, saying. Some of the things, and it was fun. It was a fun book to write.
I'd say 99 out of 100 people would have no idea the Air Mission Commander role. It is kind of an invisible spot. Yeah. In the movie Black Hawk Down, I think they portrayed it a little bit because they were at least relaying up to that individual that seemed to be holding them.
General Harrell.
Yeah.
Right.
Man.
And so this would be like he's in the Chinook in the flight. And then they used to try, so this was a 90s thing that they tried into the early 2000s, was the ABCCC, so the Airborne Command and Control Platform, right? So it'd be a C-130 with a bunch of radio consoles, but there's no ISR, there's no video.
Oh, can you imagine trying to coordinate that just by ear?
And that's what they were doing. And it sucked. So now we've come so far, like when I left, you could see the ISR feed in the cockpit.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, years before that, the ground force had a laptop that would plug into the sat antenna and they could watch it.
Years before that, there wasn't that though either.
No.
It evolved over time.
Right.
And you get radio updates.
Right.
Like, people are running. You're like,
right.
Where?
Yeah.
In which direction?
And so that, the fact that you can now see that and get some situational awareness. I did one time, the follow-on missions are always fun because I got to use the goodies, all the stuff the aircraft had to offer. The ground force would come in and go, hey, we got a follow-on target. Here's the grid. I'd pull it up on the MFD, go to imagery, and instead of a map, and they look at it and they go, yeah, we want to go there to that spot. And then I could press another button that had contour intervals, and it would show that empty spot was actually like this.
Yeah, it's not going to work.
And I was like, yeah, I can't put you there. And they're like, why not? Watch this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay.
But we still want to go there.
Yeah. Well, in Afghanistan, if you see an empty spot in a mountainous area from overhead imagery, it's probably a cemetery or a hill.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's no place that's flat in the hills that's not built on.
Yeah, the topography lines in Afghanistan are often very close together.
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you want to do with the rest of your life, man? Now that you lived a life of a hell of an adventure. What do you got now?
Well, so I did the time in the 160th, and then I did my last assignment at West Point as a commander of the flight detachment. That was where I learned to skydive and fly the general around. And I like to say that was just enough stress as the commander to, I think if I had stopped being a special operator, just stopped, I think it'd be tough, mentally and emotionally. But instead, I got to do this other job that still had a lot of responsibility.
Extended off-ramp, if you will.
Yeah, that's what it was. And so when I finished that, I got this job with the county. So I ended up being the Deputy Commissioner of Emergency Services for the Division of Emergency Management, right? And that's a long way of saying I dealt with floods and storms and things like that. I did that for 10 years. And then this takes me up to now. So I retired from New York State doing that. And it's like, all right, what's next, right? I get a little older. So I went back to school. So I'm getting my master's in communications at Johns Hopkins. And I'm doing that all online. And so that's given me time to sort of figure out where I want to go. Because what I've been doing the last couple of years, in addition to my real job, the emergency manager, was speaking gigs for fundraisers for nonprofits like the Night Stalker Foundation and the Special Operations Transition Foundation. So I'd be the guy, the draw that brings in the money. Oh, you want to sit and have a meal with Al? That's $15,000. Like, okay, and you sit down and you raise money that way. So that's been a lot of fun. And I'm trying to, kind of hone that a little bit better for some corporate speaking. So that's where I'm headed. I'm waiting for the other book to come out, and I'm writing another book. I'm actually outlining it right now. It's going to be a fiction book, military thriller, and that's kind of that there. Oh, and I'm going to visit my grandkids. Now, when I was here before, I had 3 grandkids. Now I have 5.
That's how life works.
And they're all over the place.
Yeah.
So, I was just down in D.C. watching the cheer competition for the girls.
I'm so happy my daughter never got into that.
Oh, it's insane.
That very good choice of words.
My granddaughters, both of them, are little peanuts, and they're the ones they throw in the
flyers.
Air. Yeah, they get thrown in the air.
Do you have any desire to fly anymore at all?
No.
Interesting how that is, huh?
A friend of mine used to, the same guy that gave me the ride along with their methods.
Yeah.
Or stat medevac, I think is what it was.
You want to talk about a dangerous job. Dude, I didn't realize how often those helicopters crash.
Yeah. Well, they've instituted a bunch of stuff that if they're followed, they're safer than they used to be. But he retired from that, and then he got asked to this other company. I can't remember the name. They're out of down where Hershey is, Harrisburg. So there's this company that they fly like heart transplants and lung transplants in by jet.
That makes sense.
But the traffic in that area is so bad, you got to fly it by helicopter. And they didn't have
hospital from airport. Yeah.
So they didn't have that component. So they asked him to, set one up. And so he calls me and he's like, Al, I want you to be one of my pilots. And I'm like, I don't want to do that.
I don't think it would probably check all the boxes for you. But I mean, again, it depends on how much or why you would want to fly anymore. Maybe you got all your flying done.
Yeah, maybe. But where I was going partly with the step down from the special operations to the West Point to this other thing, it was very similar. We had a school bus crash where bus flew off the road, and I helped coordinate that effort.
Yeah.
We've had, the funny thing is President Maduro, not only did the 160th go picking him up, there's my FOMO, I'm not there doing that, but they brought him back to Stewart Air Base, which was my hangar for West Point.
Probably just to piss you off.
He's sitting like this, and my office is in the background. I'm like, shit. And
I feel like they chose that intentionally just to irritate you.
They did. And I just retired the day before.
Oh, no way.
From that job, not the county job.
Yeah.
And the emergency management section was involved in dealing with the state police and the feds and all that stuff, securing him and providing comms. That would have been me. So I've totally missed out on everything.
I wonder, though, if you were to, get a little Robinson or whatever it is, and if you were able to just fly because you wanted to and just mess around, I wonder if you would fall back in love with it again with all the other pressures and stuff removed.
I think I'd get bored because
you could, or I could see that, or you'd be like, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm in love with aviation.
Oh, maybe. But at West Point, like every year, you get to, October, September, and say, oh, we've got these flight hours to burn. We didn't use them. And I'd go out single pilot in the Lakota and just fly around these beautiful days. And, upstate New York's beautiful.
Yeah, for sure.
But I got bored really quick. It's like, all right, there's an hour. Now what? Because what I liked wasn't the flying. I mean, I did like flying, but I like bringing, an assault force to the target and beating up bad guys, watching them do it.
I mean, there's a lot of problem solving in that too that terminates in them being able to get there. I get it. Yeah.
And that's, that's the thing, problem solving. So here's what a lot of people don't realize is that, like in the 160th, it's more fun to be the guy running the cockpit than the guy flying the aircraft.
Really?
Yeah. So,
Just because you're busier?
well, you're making shit happen. You're the one making sure that, and that guy's, you're telling him, fly right, turn left, climb, descend, and he's doing it. And sometimes
You're in
there's
control
some
of
fun.
the monkey on the controls.
Yeah. And so
Fly, monkey!
but yes, you're creating, we call it the stick monkey. It's like, all right.
I mean, there's some level of truth to that.
They call them monkey skills.
Yeah.
It's like monkey skills are a dime a dozen, but to be able to get to target, around the threat, my buddy, I don't know if I can't say his name. He did the Bin Laden thing.
Yep.
Right. And he tried to go public with it. He was told he could, and he started to, and then he got his pee-pee schwacked, and he's like.
So when you say the Bin Laden thing, did he successfully land a aircraft, or did he crash one in the front yard?
No. He's the Chinook.
Okay.
He was the overall flight lead. And he's,
Okay.
but the simple fact that he had come up with the plan that originally didn't include those stealth birds.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have the opportunity to tell that story. It's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get credit for that. But it's
I wish
fun
they
to be
wouldn't
the
have
guy in
taken-
charge.
I wish they wouldn't have taken those birds, only because China now has them. Within like 72 hours, I think the vast majority of that helicopter was in another country.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe
It's funny. The
stayed in the hangar, maybe.
the I can't remember the nomenclature. The first stealth drone came to Afghanistan, right? And I get a special briefing. They're like, all right, if this thing goes down, because normally we just JDAM them or go pick up some of the black boxes you might go get. They said, this thing goes down, you're going to go recover it, right? Period.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what time of day. And then I was like, okay. And about a week later, the Iranians hacked it and flew it into Iran and took it. I was like, am I going to go get it? No.
Yeah, like, you just told me that wherever this goes, so we're loading up the fuel truck. Oh man. Yeah, I didn't at the coffee shop, the alert pilots and crew will come in and I'll chat with them, and they're based out of the hospital. And they're one of the few helicopters in town. And I love watching helicopters fly, but I hate hearing that one take off because it's not going to a birthday party.
Right.
And then once you know what to listen for, I'm like, last time I saw them, I was like, you guys are flying a lot. They're like, yeah. They were flying yesterday, down south. Like, man, that is. And then also, I guess you could feel great that you're helping people, but at the same time, do you get joy from flying to somebody's worst day?
Yeah, CSAR, PR, and CASEVAC are the same way, in the military. So, PR is personal recovery. CASEVAC is it's like medevac, but the difference with medevac is it's dedicated. They have these bubbles that they operate in, right?
Yeah.
Whereas CASEVAC, you're along with the mission, and you've got the same capabilities, sometimes better.
Yeah.
We would carry what's called a SRT, surgical resuscitation team, 4 high-speed doctors, plus our flight medics, which are the best in the business.
Yeah.
But when somebody gets hurt, like Jimmy Hatch, you're going, and you're going to do everything you can to get to him. And
there's no joy in that type of flying.
I've had a lot of success stories where 6 months later you get an email saying, "Hey man, thanks for coming to get me."
Yeah.
It's like, of course I came and get you. What do you think I was going to do? And but it's nice.
Yeah.
That's my favorite mission actually. Do you know Nick Palmisano?
I do.
So I did his podcast a while back, and he asked me, he goes, "What was your most rewarding missions?" And I said, "CASEVAC." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, assault, especially when it works out, is satisfying just because the plan worked. But CASEVAC, you're saving somebody, and if you can bring a guy home and I'm doing it now too. I started to tear up. He's like, "You okay?" I'm like, "I'm sorry. It just, it's very
I get it,
emotional
man.
to me."
Yeah, I get it.
But so those are my favorite, most rewarding. Favorite's not the right word, but most rewarding was
I could see
to actually
that.
pull somebody out.
Yeah, and be the difference between them having a family or there being, a slowly forgotten member of a family, for sure. Yeah. When does the book come out? I'll let you get it. We've been on for almost 3 hours. I'll let you get it.
It's supposed to be between September, October.
Oh, so you have no idea. Amazing.
Yes. As a matter of fact, especially when I knew I was coming here, I called my editor. I was like, "Come on, give me a date." And he's like,
They'll give you a date range.
"Yeah." He's like, "Well, how did your book go?" I mean,
I don't know. It's not out yet.
Oh, it isn't.
April 14th. I have a date though. And it's a
Okay.
couple weeks away. Man, what an interesting process. The writing it I enjoyed. Then I didn't know. Thankfully, there are people who are book editors, because I tell you what, I didn't know how to use some words properly or punctuation. Semicolons really got me. And I think every time that they showed up in the book is because I hit the wrong key and didn't realize it. But those were corrected.
And then you did the audiobook?
I did the audiobook. I did it right here, actually sitting right here. I guess in previous years, you would have to travel to a studio. But I mean, these are the same microphones that they would use. So I Zoom called into an audio guy, expert, super cool, on a Zoom call. And there were some settings that we could change so he could hear the audio better and more professional, because they're worried about, like, if you get too close or too far away, the popping. Yeah. Read through it. It was about 6 hours a day for 3 days, which I didn't mind at all. It's like 2 podcasts in a day. I'm like, okay, I'm literally was sitting in this same chair.
Yeah, I had fun. I did mine in a home studio that I made.
Okay.
Blankets on the walls.
Yeah, and as long as you have the controlled environment, I don't think that they care.
And it did okay. I mean, I really enjoyed it. But my dog, I'm wearing headphones, and I had a nice microphone. And my dog would come in. He's a little Jack Russell Terrier.
Yeah, they're assholes.
And he's like,
Yep.
And I didn't hear it until the book is done and I'm listening to the final product and I hear.
See, that's why I was lucky I had another guy listening. And I would almost always know when I needed to repeat something, but you round something on a word, it doesn't come out super clear. So 3 days of that. But I turned in the written manual script, which I think is the right word for it. It's nonfiction, well over a year ago. So the process has just been really long. I finally got actual hardcover versions of it. Is it hardcover or hardback? Hardcover, right?
I think it's hardcover. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. 2 days ago. And it comes out today's the 26th of March, 3 weeks.
Nice.
It might be. I have absolutely no idea what to expect.
The publishers don't do much for you anymore. I mean, even Nick was saying that about Scars and Stripes. He said you pretty much have to do your own promo stuff.
That's what he said to me as well.
This is still selling. I mean, the paperback just came out.
So how do they decide when they transition from a hardcover to paperback?
It's usually 18 months.
Okay, so that is going to happen at some point.
Probably. Like, did you sign a contract that probably has that in there?
Yeah, I didn't read that though.
Oh.
Again, if I turned the manual script in a year ago, I signed that contract 2 years ago, I might have signed away the rights to my children.
Well, that's the thing, right? So Chinooks in the Dark, I signed that contract 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I mean, it
I'm
took
sure
a
I
year
can find
in
it
the
somewhere
DoD.
buried in a file folder on my computer. But at this point, I'm like, hey, in 3 weeks, this thing comes out. So,
but what's cool is it's still selling, which is fun. So, I go on Amazon every couple of days. I look at the
rankings,
the seller ranking.
Yeah.
And if I can be in the double digits as opposed to 3 digits, that's good.
What genre is it in on Amazon?
Military history and memoir.
Okay, I don't know where mine will land. I did Andy Frizella's podcast not too long ago. Holy cow. It peaked at number 143 of all books on Amazon, and it's not out yet.
Oh. Hey, let me tell you, when I did Sean Ryan's podcast, they ran out of books.
Yeah.
I'm sure the same thing will happen here. Your listenership probably just as big.
Nope, not at all. But I don't know Sean well at all, but I am super appreciative of the platform that he has built. It's amazing to me. There's something weird going on in the veteran community right now, and I don't know if it's a matter of because the GWAT is increasingly farther away in the rear view mirror, but there seems to be 2 camps. One of them is, it doesn't matter how much you've done, it wasn't enough. And the other camp is, even if you've done things outside of the military, never forget that you would have been nothing without your military service.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I don't understand that. Like, my theory is this: your experiences are yours to do with what you want to. So if you are a train wreck and you rely upon those military experiences, go ahead and do that, but you get to eat the consequences of that. And I don't understand why people can't realize that you could have had a military job that was very interesting, but also without that qualifier, you could still be an interesting person as well. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because some people view what other people are doing and they want to have that, so they try to chop them down at the knees. Yeah. To me, it's like, dude, awesome. That just shows you what's possible. Now, if you want to go get that, let me tell you right now, the path to getting to where Sean is not by talking shit about Sean and saying, oh, he shouldn't be doing that or we should be doing it a different way. It's like, dude, just do better. Figure out, maybe he has a personality that you're never going to have. Sorry.
Yeah.
Welcome to the real world.
And he's super nice, by the way.
That's what I'm saying. We text back and forth very infrequently. Usually it's memes or when he and I get put into the same thing and be like, did you see this shit? I'm like, I know, I saw it too. And I met him one time. But again, why not from a distance be like, dude, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm stoked that you were able to build something like that.
Yeah.
Did he take the exact path or approach that I would? No. But I'm not into this competitive success.
Right. Well, that's the thing is that,
Methodology.
one of the things I'm considering, right, as I try to support these nonprofits is, other than, corporate speaking, is maybe doing a podcast, but I don't know, where I would even start with something like that. I look at what you guys do and it's like,
This is like so what we are sitting inside of right now is basically, it was a shell that was created by a Hollywood set production company, which who's better to make things that look real that aren't real than a Hollywood set production company, because that's what they do. Before this, it was curtains. Before that, it was a smaller room in the same building with smaller curtains, and Michael barely fit behind his desk, wedged into the wall. Before that, it was just me in the room.
this is gorgeous.
It's amazing.
It really is.
Before that, it was me just in a room, and I had to watch back every interview that I did, and I was doing the camera angles afterwards. So you want to talk about wanting to put a gun in your mouth? Just listen to yourself talk for 3 to 4 hours on a conversation you've already had. And before that, I was at my house. And before that, it was audio only. So, don't view it as a current snapshot of what I'm super, super happy with what it is right now. But this is many iterations down the road.
Well, I'm in the process of deciding the first iteration. So
I would just say do it for if you can figure out a reason, or if you know the reason that you want to do it is because you're generally interested in doing it, I would say go for it. Yeah. I get bombarded with people who say, hey, I want to start a podcast. And they almost always add this one qualifier, and they'll say, I want to start a podcast. How did you monetize yours? Like, ooh, cart in front of the horse a little bit.
The funny thing with that is, so, I get through my website, people will come on there and they'll ask me to speak, and if it's a good thing, I'm pretty much like, sure, and totally. They're like, what do you charge me? Nothing, just pay my expenses. Yeah. And my wife, kind of is like, no, have them talk to me. I think, because I would.
That's actually the move. That is the move.
Because I'll always be like, yeah, I tell you what, buy 50 books and pay my plane fare, and I'll come do whatever you want.
Outsource that to somebody else.
Yeah, I have to, because
I'm in the same boat too. Like a fire department will hit me up, or an agency. I have two prices. I have the not-for-profit agencies, which I will do anything I can to work inside of budgets, and then there's the for-profit price, which those are two different things.
Listen, we've got a thing. For your listeners, in October is the 25th, September 11th, 25th anniversary. And then in October, the Night Stalker Foundation is doing this thing at the top of the Freedom Tower. They've got a big venue up there, and it's one of those fundraisers for the Night Stalker Foundation. I'm not sure who the keynote speaker is going to be yet. They were looking at some big names, but they were kind of hoping for some pro bono work or something like that. Yeah. But it has to be somebody. It can't just be somebody who's cool. Like in our eyes, it has to be somebody who finance people in New York City would find interesting. Oh, I'd like to go hear him. We've had, Bill McCraven do some stuff. He's a pretty good draw, but, we've seen him, kind of thing. So now
I understand what you're saying. How did the 160th get permission to fly under that bridge in New York?
I don't know.
Because you know what I'm talking about,
I do know. And I can tell you.
The Little Birds went first, and then I think it was the Black Hawks. I don't know if Chinooks were involved in this evolution.
I have seen video of it. Now, I don't know if it's real. And that's the problem is.
I think this one's real. Michael, TF-160th flying under bridge in New York. I'm pretty
Was it New York or was it San Francisco?
It was New York.
Oh, okay.
I think.
Yeah. This happened once before I got to the 160. So I got there in 95. So like in 93 or 4, they underflew a bridge.
This is definitely modern era.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I saw it. Yeah, I just don't know if it's not AI.
I don't think it is. Come on, Michael.
Yep, I got it.
I mean, is it,
This is New York, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, the Brooklyn Bridge. Okay.
Yeah. Let's get some volume, Michael. Volume! That's not AI. That is not AI. I mean, they're not putting anybody at risk.
No.
Here's something that people may not understand, are not going to like. Military aviation is not really constrained by the same rules as the FAA.
No, and chances are, if that's, it probably is real, but
Yeah, that's 100% real.
But we've done stuff where I went out to New York approach control, and we were doing a parachute jump with the cadets into, I don't know, Giant Stadium or something like that.
Oh, did you? So you actually went out to the building
Yep.
they're in?
So I went to the TRACON,
which is actually
and talked to them.
really cool to see how they do stuff.
It was, but here's what's even cooler. So it's a very, it's just a couple of buildings and a fenced-in area.
They look like
you know?
nondescript
Right.
offices, yeah.
And so they're like, hey, can you come back, a month before? We want to talk to you one more time, about how we're going to do this. It's like, sure. And they go, can you land right there? And they point at the grass outside their building.
Obviously.
And I'm like, I can, but this is the TRACON. And they go, yeah, we'll give you permission. So they just wanted to, see it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're easy to work with.
Yeah.
And I would fly over that all the time. You get the BMW, the Brooklyn Bridge, Manhattan Bridge, and Williamsburg Bridge. And then you get the UN.
Yeah.
And LaGuardia is right there. But, yeah. And South Heliport, or not South.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, the unmarked black helicopters do what they want.
There's a process. I mean, I bet you they went and surveyed it firsthand.
Oh, for sure.
Right? There's a restaurant right where this is taken from, called the Riverside Cafe. I guarantee they walk the grounds, make sure there's nothing hanging down. There's a process so there's a manual called the ATM, Aircrew Training Manual, that has everything you do in the aircraft with a task, condition, and standard. Tells you how to do it, right? Underflying obstacles is a task. So,
I agree. And like I said, the FAA can get real mad, but if they were doing military training,
I would bet they had permission.
I would think they did too. I
I
would hope that they did,
because if they
that's
didn't,
high profile.
I was going to say, if you didn't, you'd hear about it by now.
Oh, the boss is 100% getting sent that faster than you would ever, probably before those turbines had spun down.
I told you before we started filming about being in Colorado with the snowmobiles in the back of the Chinooks.
Yeah.
Somebody took a picture of that and sent it to the regimental commander and said, look, your guys are out screwing off, taking guys with snowmobiles up in the mountains. It's like, those are 10th Group. Those are their official vehicles. And yes, we are doing that.
It's also shut up, nerd.
But at first they were all mad, It's like, what are they doing?
Where can people find you?
Easiest way to find me is my website, alancmack.com.
Okay.
Or just Google Alan Mack podcast and you find, me I'm all over the place. I did, Sean, yours now twice. Did Mike Ritland.
Yep. Mike's
was
awesome.
also super nice.
Yep.
And an assortment of other guys, lesser knowns, but also very good interviewers. So,
Well, hell yeah, man. Thank you for making the trip out. I deeply appreciate it. You got to sign those books for me.
yep, these are signed, and I promised Michael he could have one.
But the thing is this. Promises are made to Michael all the time.
Oh, I got a coin for you too. I think I
also
gave you
can't
one of
read.
these last time, but I don't know. So,
Michael, looking at this, which direction is the helicopter turning?
I can barely see. It's too far away.
Unbelievable.
now imagine just dimming that down so you can barely see it.
This is all you get and your life depends on it. We are at, what are we looking at here?
A slight right turn, I think.
Slight right turn, about a 10-degree bank.
Oh, that's
And if you look on the left side, there's a little diamond.
Yep.
That's a terrain following radar cue.
Okay.
That's called a floating diamond.
Yep.
It's not bad. So good.
Always, Michael, try to keep the blue on top of the brown.
Yeah, I realize now what it is.
Awesome, man. Thank you.
All right.